Synth Network.
And a very good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, depending on where you are. This is the Pro Synth Network live show, episode 61, I believe. And we are here live on June 4th, 2021. I am joined, as always, by my co-hosts Ben Simpson and Cryss Synthient. And this week we are delighted to be joined by our friend of the show, Manny Fernandez. Welcome, one and all.
Welcome, welcome. Thanks for having me.
How are you, Manny? How is it over there in California?
I was telling Cryss, it's toasty in my neck of Los Angeles.
And it doesn't get any cool with all that machinery going full pelt behind you with all the screens and the heat. Well, good to have you with us. Thanks for joining us. Lots to talk about. We will be asking Manny all sorts of questions during the show, as well as just the news topics, but also about his history and things that he's done in the past, and some very interesting stuff there. So if you have any questions for Manny, do put them into the chat room. Just tag either at Pro Synth Network, or you can tag Synthient Sound, or is it just Ben Simpson for you, Ben?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, just tag one of us in there, and that should get our attention. But we will be covering some news topics as well. There's a few interesting developments that we'd like to discuss with everyone. Let's go to Ben. How are rehearsals going for you, Ben, this week? I think you've been kind of locked away under light, lots of big lights and
heavy
PA
rehearsals
systems
going on, yeah. It's been a bit of a mixed bag, because at the start of the week we were like fraught with technical problems. Like apparently Big Sur doesn't get on well with X32s, and there's all kinds of audio glitching everywhere, and I've managed to solve all that. I've had a couple of sleepless nights, but by the time we got to Wednesday and Thursday, they were really good, and it was all feeling quite confident when we left today. So yeah, it's been good. It's been really, really good time, and like great, like team building thing as well. So yeah, it's been really good. Really enjoyed it.
I miss that kind of thing. I haven't played in the band for years, but I do miss rehearsals when you can just mess around, have a bit of fun, play around with stuff, and
it's been
good, excellent. Cryss, our second Californian in the room today. You should feel quite at home. There's two of you there. Are you two quite far apart, or are you nearby? I don't know.
That's a loaded California question. Talking distance or drive time?
Yes. Yeah. Are you as far apart as I am from Ben, maybe? Because we're like 250 miles, aren't we?
Theoretically, it should take me 40 minutes max to get to Cryss. It
could be LA traffic. Anyway, how is it, Cryss? You're muted, mate. You're on mute.
Well, there we go. How about that?
Everybody take a drink.
I didn't miss anything. I pretty much said the same things that Manny was saying.
But everything good with you?
Yeah, everything is well here.
Good.
Been looking forward to having Manny on the show. You guys got to speak with him on the Essence FM special, but
yes,
as much as see each other around, this is the first time I get to actually talk with him.
Yeah, he's a fun guy. So we've got lots to go through in terms of news. It's some very interesting stuff. And quite fortuitously, one particular news story that will tie in with Manny very well, but we'll come to that a little bit later. I'm going to apologise now if you do get any kind of external sounds. I've got my window wide open because it is. If there's anybody in the UK, particularly in the southeast of the country, you'll know that it's been kind of a muggy, wet, miserable day. and I'm just kind of all sticky, and I'm not going to go into details, but I need my window open, so I apologise if there are any external sound effects being picked up.
Absolutely roasting up north.
I know it's one of those odd days where everything's flipped. Yeah. You guys normally have all the rain.
Yeah. I've been looking at it through the window.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, so there you go. Right, lots to talk about. And before we do, let's just get the housekeeping out of the way. First of all, let's say hi to everyone in the chat room. All the usual regulars are there. And if you're new to the show, then welcome. And make sure you hit the like buttons and the subscribe buttons and the bells that tell you when we're doing a show and all of that kind of stuff. That would be most helpful. But also, don't forget that you can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, and of course on Twitter. If you want to follow us on those channels, you'll get any updates and sort of goodies that we post up there. But Facebook's where the group is, and it's where the bulk of the people are. And of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, you know where to find us already, so that's good. But make sure you hit that subscribe button. You can get in touch with us via email, info@prosynthnetwork.com. And we are funded by you, very, very generous people. And if you want to carry on doing that, which we deeply appreciate, there is the address. The link is in the description underneath the video, but there is cut.ly/PSN-donate. All donations are incredibly welcome and keep us on the air, which is what we want to do. So there we go. That's all the formalities out of the way. Let's go to our first piece of news. I was kind of excited by this one because it's Solid State Logic releasing the UC1 channel strip and bus compressor controller. Now, I didn't really read that title fully. I just saw UC1 channel strip and bus compressor. I missed the controller part because I then scrolled down, as I always do, to the bottom of the page to find the price, and I saw the price and I thought, wow, $499 plus tax. That's pretty good for an SSL. And then as I went back, I started to see these references to it being a controller, and that's all it is. It's just a hardware controller, albeit a hardware controller that comes with full licenses of their native channel strip 2 and their bus compressor 2 plugins. So, it's a bit of software, but I was kind of hoping that it might have the audio interface thing built in as well. But
the thing
nevertheless,
a lot of modern technology is all DSP anyway, isn't it? It's just that
True.
the bits that's doing it are external to the unit. So
yeah,
you're still getting quality algorithms and whatnot.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And
I think it's brilliant. Yeah.
And for those people that are familiar with using SSL desks, then obviously the layout is going to be incredibly... I mean, I've never used an SSL desk, but I do use Reason, whose desk is modelled on an SSL. And so this looks instantly familiar. And yeah, I could, eminently usable. But who has an opinion on this? I mean, for me, I was a little disappointed that it wasn't, an audio interface and everything built in. But nevertheless, it looks like a nice bit of kit. Anyone got any thoughts?
I think it's still, for a controller, it is a tad expensive, isn't it? But you do get the licensing with it. The only thing when I was reading up on it, it said that you can run something like 8 instances of the compressor in the machine. Like, okay. You know what I mean? You can control those. You've got access to control them. But unlimited instances in the software. Now, I don't know if I've misunderstood that, but I thought that was a bit disappointing. Like, because if you've got this control surface, you'd expect it to just work all the way through, whichever track you're on. If you're on track like 200, then you still want that compressor controller to work. So
you can have like
the flames. Yeah,
you could have 20 instances of the compressor. I can't even say the word compressor plugin. But this will only control up to 8 of those from the surface?
I came to that impression with the stuff I was reading. I don't know.
Right.
8 of what? I'm sorry, I missed the what? 8 of what?
8 instances of the compressor maximum can be controlled from here, which seems odd. But
you think it'd just work them all?
Yeah.
But yeah, it looks great, and it goes really well with the UC8, doesn't it? Have you seen them together? It's
just
like you're starting to get an SSL look to your
Did you? Was it
studio.
you that sent me the picture?
Yeah, I
Just
sent
before.
you. Yeah, it
I'll
was
see if I can dig that out.
thing where it all like powered up and
Yeah.
really funky for a bit, like. But yeah. Good.
Is this something that would interest you, Manny?
So, first of all, as a DAW user on a regular basis, I am really such low-level neophyte still. That said, the reasons why a lot of that is because, as I've mentioned to you before, computer-based interfaces for things just typically drive me nuts.
Yeah.
So I'm big into controller surfaces, so something like this is definitely something that would have more interest to me because, you know, working your DAW shouldn't be a carpal tunnel risk.
Yeah.
And that's where stuff like this is really, really useful. I mean, it looks great, and obviously if you don't already have the plugins, the price actually isn't bad, you know. If I were to go down something that line, I'd like things that have that process to be able to have a hardware interface to their softwares, because typically, you know, an emulated knob and slider interface on a computer is just ergonomically, in my opinion, just horrible to have a good workflow. So something like this, you know, where you can just get tweaking away.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just found that Ben sent me this video. Let me just find this here. It's on Facebook, so it'll be this one, I think. I hope. Let's bring that. Is that sharing? There we go. So add this to the stream. Here we go. So this is the UC1. And is it the UC? What's the other thing,
I
Chris?
think it's the UF8. It is.
UF8. That's it. So this
Yeah,
is like the
that's
faders, isn't it? So let me just play this video. I'm going to have to do this cack-handedly while I let me just bring this over onto my other screen, and then hopefully I can control this better and still see what I'm doing. Technology is a marvelous thing. Right. If I hit play, you should. Let me just bring the volume up because I know there is sound on here. There we go. So this is both of them together.
All right, here we go.
Being powered up for the first time. I love that. I'm sorry, that stuff like that really makes me happy. I love seeing powered faders. Oh, look at that. They all, it's brilliant.
That's right.
Look how smooth the faders are.
Yeah.
as well. That's
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I've got a Behringer X Touch over there, and like when that's going, it sounds like somebody's like filing down a piece of metal, you know. But that just looks wonderful. To me.
I remember when I got my first car that when you turned the ignition on, all the dials went like this and kind of, you know, all kind of zeroed themselves. And I was just like, oh, I love this. I'm going to have the car just because of that. That has the same effect on me. I'm dying to get something with motorized faders, but I've got no space to put them.
Yeah, I need that. I think I will be getting that at some point. Yeah.
How about you, Chris? You haven't said anything about this. Does it interest you?
It does. I think I would file it under the category of really want, but don't know if I can really justify it. I do have the SSL channel strip and bus compressor plugins. They had a sale, I think it was maybe last year, where I think they're usually like $350 or so, and they came down to $49, so I snagged them. Really liked, and then what was also done for these controllers is they've released a new version of those plugins. So if you, even if you're not planning to use the controller, you can go ahead and upgrade to the version 2 of both of those. And so. As I was not feeling as well earlier in the week, I just sat at the computer and I pulled up Easy Drummer, and you know, just like their stock kit, put a pattern in there. If I had known I was going to listen to it for like straight 3 hours, I maybe would have picked a better sound. But I put that on and I just went through all my compressors, and you know, particularly the bus compressors, and just did a shootout. It was one of those things like that's kind of boring to do, but you know, it will be very helpful, and to hear them side by side and gain matched, and actually out of all of them, I mean, some of them sounded really good, and I mean, it's a conversation for another day. But the one that sounded the best on drums was this new SSL bus compressor 2. So yeah, as far as a controller goes, I mean, I wish it wasn't so expensive. I'm not saying that it's not worth it, because there's a lot of stuff that goes into that controller. So I know that it is going to cost a bit. It's one of those items that it's not going to make my music any better. It would make it easier to make music, but not going to make it any better, because I can still do with a trackpad everything I can do with that. It would be nice to have. So I don't know. I guess we'd have to see. It's not a high priority thing right now, but I would love to have one.
Yeah, they're certainly desirable items for sure.
The other thing that would make it a lot more useful is integration with other channel plugins. And so there was some discussion about, will this work with Plugin Alliance? Because they've had some sort of relationship with SSL, and one of the other console strips that I really like to use is their SSL 4000E, which just sounds phenomenal for guitars, and it's a little more colored sounding than the SSL native version. So if they can get that going, and it was, both companies were like, well, the other one has to want to do it, and Plugin Alliance like, well, tell SSL, and SSL's like, hey, we want more people to do this because more people will buy our stuff. So I don't know where the hang up is, but that would make it a lot more useful, because if you could still use your other console plugins in it, if there were some, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I bought those on your recommendation, the Plugin Alliance stuff, and it is very nice. And it was even nicer because it was on an extremely good deal as well. So, highly recommend. It'd be nice if they did work. Anyway, that's SSL's UC1. It's available now, I believe, for 499 of your British pounds, 849 of your US dollars, and 619 of your European euros, plus taxes, of course. And it's available now for Mac and PC. Let's have a look at this little thing, because this is interesting. I possess none of these instruments, so I didn't take a huge look at this. But this is Patch Mapper from Sunny Synths. Now, with these kind of clones of the old gear, particularly Behringer stuff there, they're also looking at things like the Moog, Matriarch, and Grandmother in there as well. These are patch mappers, and a lot of these synths don't necessarily transmit their settings via any of the normal methods, and so this is yet another way, I guess, of storing and saving your settings in a fairly efficient manner, particularly in a way that looks like the synth that you're working with. There have been other plugins or tools, should I say, that do stuff like this, that either allows you to take a picture and save it within the plugin so that you can see it in the DAW. But this seems actually like a really elegant way of doing it. Did anybody buy one of these or try one of these, and can you comment on their experience?
So I was looking into it this week, and they seem really interesting, but I haven't, I just haven't had the time. There were other things that were more important. I think the Matriarch one, I've got the Matriarch, and also I don't remember if they had one for the Cat or not, but they have one for the Model D, and so it might be kind of a nice thing to have. They're not terribly expensive. I wish the graphics were a little bit better, but that's kind of a pretty minor thing. But they look like I like to see people doing this, and also how they graphically represent the envelopes as you're doing this stuff. So, yeah,
it does. They do look very nice. I guess you just have to use them. They're only about $12 or €12 each. So it's not a terribly difficult thing. Manny, I don't know, have you got anything that would make use of these?
I don't. But the concept is really interesting, because it's nice to have essentially an easily accessible digital database of essentially visual storage, because it does beat taking pictures of stuff. Yeah. And assuming that the relationships are reasonable, the fact that they do show envelopes and such is a good idea. So I did poke around and look at what their examples were. What I find interesting, again, is sort of the paradigm of when you use those types of instruments. You know, I like the fact that I can't store anything when I use those kinds of things, you know. And on the few times that I've gone through the trouble of, you know, whatever, patch sheets for my Odyssey or my Pro 1, the funny thing is that the reason why you really want to nail it, you can still never get it back the second time.
Yeah.
You know?
Because you're also
you get close, but it's just not there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
never
but you're a big fan because we've talked many times before, and you're a big fan of creating something and then it's gone.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, again, look, so much of the stuff I do is in the digital storage, you know, realm recently. But as you know, I mentioned, you know, my whole background is from, you know, classic modular synths, and you know, they are of the moment. And, you know, that's, you know, it's really, really cool. But again, there are obviously practical reasons for stuff like this, where you're going to want to have, you know, ballpark recall of, you know, something to go back in and do a project. And this is the first time I've actually seen a product like this. And I thought, from, you know, what they're trying to accomplish, it appears like they did a pretty good job with it. Yeah.
I think I kind of prefer this to, if I was in the position to use this, I'd prefer this to taking a picture, because, you know, you've got to do this, take a picture, and then you upload it. Whereas this, you don't have to leave that world, and you can just put it in, and it looks like the thing. And it's just a shame that some of these manufacturers, you know, they're building modern analog synths, and one of the things that I like about recreations is that they put in elements that weren't there in the original that benefit us today, and one of those would be some kind of patch memory, or I know that would sometimes defeat the point of the instrument or the tool, but nevertheless, little solutions like this are out there.
Yeah, it was one of the things that I think people really wanted with, like, say, the Matriarch. The Matriarch is such a fantastic sounding synthesizer, and they do offer you a lot of options within the firmware. The problem is that accessing those options is a pretty tough ordeal, and you can never see exactly where everything is set unless you just reset it. And so it involves, you know, holding some buttons and entering a mode as you power up, and then you use the key bed to, you know, this, you know, C1, and then you press, you know, B flat 2 or something, and it changes some setting, and it gets to be quite convoluted. So there was, I think we may have talked about it last year, where there was an online editor that you could hook up your Matriarch to, and then you can control all those other settings. And I can't recall, but I think this one may have that flexibility as well, because there's another page on this editor where if you put it in, it'll just gather all those settings, and then you manually put in where you have your patch set up.
A little bit like, do I do that all the time during the show? I have Hot Corner set up on my Mac to put it into sleep mode, and I often sit down to the wrong place. Let me share this screen because I've unshared it. Here we go. Behringer 2600 patch mapper. Right. And bring it in. There we go. Is that what you were talking about there?
I can't see it big enough on my screen, but that looks like it was probably it. I know with the Matriarch they had one that was showing some of those settings. I'm not sure if there's a whole lot. Yeah, so they would probably do a lot of the same things that the Synth Tribe app from Behringer would do in something like this. Yeah.
But it's an interesting little sideline for a company. These are fairly affordable. Let's say they're about €12 each, so they're not at all expensive, and they are available for. Let's just go back. It's not going to play ball with me now, is it? Let's go back to patch. Let's see if we can go straight here. So we've got.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I would say we've got the Behringer's 2600 K2 Model D, Neutron, Odyssey, Poly D, and Pro 1. A couple of Dread boxes, the Erebus version 3, the Nix version 2, and then the Grandmother and the Matriarch from Moog at the moment. They also do full editor and librarians for the DSi Pro 2 and the Korg Prologue as well. But it's a nice little venture. Sorry, Chris.
I was just going to say that. Sorry, when you said before, Robbie, that you'd rather have that than the photos. I think the photos are easier.
All right. Well, so, I mean, yeah, I've not really had much experience.
Yeah, it's just that, like, with that, for me, I've got the Pro 1, and if I wanted to use the Pro 1, unless I'm totally misunderstanding the concept of it, I would dial in my sound on the Pro 1, and then I'd have to do it again on the software.
Yeah.
Save that.
Yeah.
And then it's like 4 stages. Like, so it's like...
True. Yeah,
that's
good. Yeah.
Do it again, save it, load it up, and then do it again on the synth. Where if you take a photo, it's in an instant, and there are like plugins where you can save them within
save the photo within
your
that,
project. So I don't know whether I'm as keen on it as everybody else, but yeah, I don't think it, for me anyway. I don't know what the other ones offer, but I had a look into the Pro 1, and I didn't think it was worth me spending £10 on that because I wouldn't get much use out of it. Because a bit like Manny as well, a lot of things I do are gone forever. You know, I deliberately don't recall them. You know, like I don't make any record of it just because I'm dizzy half the time, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of people sample their stuff. Tell me if I'm wrong, but
I do.
You create your patch and then you sample it, and then that's your preservation of that patch. I don't know.
Well, then you mangle with it on the sample and ruin it.
You're talking to Mr. Digital here, right? You know, the only analog thing that I've got that would benefit would be the MS-101. So yeah, there you go. Sunny Synths, €12 each. Little patch mappers and savers for your non-storing analog stuff. Right, let's see, what should we do next? I think, let me just remove that from there. Oh, I know what I was going to do, because somebody has just said in the chat room, I think it was Wagyu, thank you for bringing this to my attention. Just as a quick little aside here, drum roll please, Synth Network has achieved the massive number of where are we? There we go. 600 subscribers. Woohoo!
Yes. Big leagues. We're in the
we're getting there. We're only 400 shy of being able to do a whole bunch of things. So thank you to everyone that subscribed. It's much appreciated. And please do tell your friends and get them to sign up as well and get closer to that magic 1,000. I think I will calm down a little bit about subscriber numbers once we hit that 1,000 mark, because it gives us a little bit extra. But yeah, thanks to everyone for subscribing. It's much appreciated. Right, that's enough of that. Let's move on to the next news topic. Let's do a little bit of software now. Let's bunch some of these together. So first up, in terms of some new software, we have from Sinevibes, who we are big fans of here with their plugins for Mac and for the Korg log type system. This is their new one, which is the Eternal Barber-Pole Flanger, which sounds rather fruity. It's $29 plus taxes for audio units and VST3s on Mac OS. We've got a network error on the video there. That's no good. Let's see if we can refresh that, because I was going to play you the demo. There we go. Let's have a listen to this. So this is the dry signal. Oh, that's nice. But yeah, I think you get the idea. It's a triple layer flanger engine with positive or negative feedback, multi-output through zero modulation generator, with a variable stereo phase offset. Seeing as it's playing some guitar tones there, shall we ask our resident guitarist what he thinks of this? Your thoughts, Cryss?
I love Sinevibes stuff. If you're looking for a more traditional flanger, their dipole will work really well for that, and has the normal waves for it. Barber-Pole isn't my favorite thing. It is very interesting technically how they do it, and using multiple LFOs and crossfades, and so it sounds like the sound is ever going up, but it's like a Barber-Pole's sign where there's only a certain amount of things. However, if it's 2 or 3 or 4 LFOs going, but they're using a ramp that as it gets to the top, one's already in the middle, and then one's at the bottom if it's using 3, and then you just crossfade between them. So it always sounds like it's going up or always sounds like it's going down, and to be honest, I find it a little unnerving.
It's funny. That's exactly why I dig it. The whole Shepherd function thing is really cool. A couple of revs back, they put a version of that in the montage as part of the effects updates. But this one I thought sounded really good, both the basic phaser utilization of it and the barber shop effect. And they did a very good job with their crossfade algorithm, because it sounds very continuous and smooth when you really dial it down slow. One of the things that it's good for me, even though Cryss finds the effect unnerving, is using it over like a slow wave sequence. Okay. Is really kind of cool, because you'll have a periodicity of repetition in that harmonic structure, but then you have this overlay of either upwards or downwards continuous thing, and it actually can be a really, really cool effect. So I really enjoyed playing with that. I thought it was really good sounding.
Yeah, I mean, for the price that you pay for these things, they do sound incredibly good. You get a lot for your money. This one isn't available yet in their Korg log format, so you can't upload it to things like the NTS1. But generally, these things do appear in that format at some point, which is always nice. Ben, fan of this?
Well, I can't speak as eloquently as Cryss and Manny did about it. I hadn't got a clue what was going on. I do understand it a little bit, bit more now. It sounded good though. It was like more. It seemed to have a more like natural tone to it than the other flangers that I've used myself. And I was really annoyed actually, because I've just finished working on Planet Earth, a song by Duran Duran years ago.
Oh, I thought you meant The Planet Earth.
It's like, well, I've been working on that as well, but it's like drowned in this like flanging effect. It's everywhere in that song.
Yes, yeah.
But I couldn't get the right kind of tone. Everything I tried was it was like too much or not enough, and I reckon this would have worked perfectly on it, so I might go back and revisit it for that. But I think it's all right. I think it's got a nice kind of subtle flanging effect, if that's possible. It's really quite a natural sounding kind of thing.
Well, certainly in that demo it sounded very nice. And of course it does also form part of their bundle pack, so you can get that along with the albedo, the blend, the dipole, the droplet, and luminance for $149. So that's 6 plugins there, which will get you something like a 23% discount. But yeah, so let's move on to another effect. Just going to kind of whiz through a few of these. This is an interesting one because I was trying to kind of figure out their business model. This is FKFX is the name. Now these apparently are guys that have been in the business working for other companies creating plugins, and now they've kind of left that world and they're kind of creating their own, but they're doing it kind of via a Patreon model. So yeah, 2 guys escaped from the audio industry making high-end performance and super sound plugins for free. So you can get the plugins for free. But do you have to I think this is the bit. Do you have to subscribe to their Patreon to then get their stuff for free, or not? You don't.
No, you don't.
Okay, that's cool. So I could have downloaded. I wasn't quite sure whether you could. So yeah, FKFX plugins are free, but this new one is the obvious filter. I can't remember if I hit the sound button on here. So just tell me if you can. Let's see if we get the video here. Just look. Are you getting that audio?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obvious. Instant yellow.
That sounds quite interesting. And I mean, when you look at this, you think this is a free effect. This actually looks like something you'd pay a reasonable amount of money for. The design ethic is there, definitely, for sure. And so this is their funding is done through Patreon, but you get to download these things for free. What are the benefits though? Therefore, is it just so you get updates, extra preset packs, support, future plugin beta access? I got told off by my daughter the other because I just always call it beta access. I think it's just the English way, and beta is probably the correct way. Anyway, thoughts on this one, Manny? Let's go to you first on this. Was this something you liked?
So, actually, it was really fun.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I downloaded it, and it wasn't like finding the documentation per se. I mean, maybe you have to be on the Patreon for it, but I'm going there and I'm playing with it. And I'm just like, I can't get it to work. And then it just finally dawned on me. I had to actually hit play on my DAW for it to pick up the tempo to actually do the stuff. And I was like, duh, right?
Okay.
So it was really fun. I have to say, it was really, really fun. Especially when you have, synchronized drum loops. Overlaid with some synth textures. It's just kind of fun because you can do all those, those effects that typically, if you're building them by scratch, are a pain in the butt to do. I joked when I heard the first demo because all I could think of was "Oh yeah" from Yellow, for God's sake. But it was definitely pretty easy to use. Editing it was relatively straightforward. So, it's not a style that I play in a lot, but if you wanted to sit down and kill some time and just get some cool things going with just because the interface, like you said, I thought was pretty well done. And the morphs can be really, really drastic. And I like the fact that just on the fly you can change the filtering types and all that sort of stuff, so you can get things whacked out. So I and again, for relative to their business model, it looks like it's just a modern version of donationware.
Yeah.
That they're just assuming I'm going to make good stuff. Enough people are going to say, "Hey, that's cool, support you," and they'll go the Patreon way. Yeah. So.
Yeah, because it looks like it's a couple of guys from France, Nicolas Lacumette, who used to work for Divine Machines, or was a creator of the Divine Machine, multi-warded plugin designer, musician, and core DSP code is from Lauren Desoras, ex of Ohmforce, who made some really cool stuff. I don't know, are they still going, Ohmforce? I haven't really heard much from them. But yeah, very, very interesting. Ben?
Yeah.
You have a chance to play with that?
Very much like Manny. I downloaded it and I lost like a good hour before. I was just like gone. It's because the demo said this is just a bass drum pattern. I thought, I'm going to try that because I don't believe them. That's got other stuff going on. And I just had a straight out of Labs, that new percussion thing that's with Labs.
Oh yes.
Just had the kick drum going, Labs, and I stuck that on it on an insert, and next thing it was an hour later, and I'd made all kinds of crazy stuff. It was like at one point I actually got it close to like a proper drum beat, just from the kick. I had a snare sound in there and this thing that sounded like hi-hats, and so that's amazing. That's just with a single bass drum. What kind of mad stuff can you get out of it if you put like a sequence through it, like some sort of analog sequence, and then you've got all this modulation going off over the top. I think it's brilliant. It's really good, and I didn't join the Patreon thing because I'm tight, and I thought I'll check this out first, like before I waste like £2.50 a month on something. And then I was pleasantly surprised. It was like, this is well worth subscribing for. They're going to create some great things. You should really get behind them and support it, because with the funding they can go on to make more and more. And it's really good. That's a brilliant piece of software, I think. It's a brilliant plugin.
It is an interesting way. As Manny says, it is kind of a form of donationware, but I guess because it's Patreon, it's regular donations, regardless of how much they're putting out. Obvious Filter is the first of their creations, and they're planning more. I think they only literally started doing this about a month ago, around the beginning of May, and they've only got at the moment, according to this Patreon page, 8 patrons. So let's see if we can change that. And I think when people get to play with this thing, I mean, $2.50 a month is nothing really, is it? Just to give them your support. But if you really want to go for it, then there are 2 other tiers there as well, which is interesting. Chris, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I was interested in this, and it's been kind of also interesting to see that there's been a number of filters coming out recently for free. Tal filter we covered, the minimal audio rift, and I can't remember what else has come out recently, but I've got like a small collection of filters now, and I had been looking for a MIDI envelope and LFO plugin to be able to manipulate this stuff a little bit better, because some of these have envelope follower controls and some don't, and just to be able to do some more creative things in the DAW. So I still need to get that settled. I downloaded this, but it wouldn't authorize in Logic. I'm not sure what was going on, so hopefully I can get that sorted out and try it, because even though the music was not like really what I would listen to, I thought that they did a good job in picking a style that demonstrates what it does. Now, some other plugins that I have done this kind of stuff, and just like what Manny was saying, like this is great for rhythmic stuff. So I've done it with drums and UVI Shade, and also what's that company's name? Portal. I forget the name of the company. Anyways, they have multi-segment envelope generation, and then stereo filters, and it can get really fun, and especially when you have a sound that's like very pedestrian, and you like want to spice it up a little bit or have some fun. And whether you run your entire track through it or you have it in a parallel mix or something, it can be quite interesting to add some movement in this way.
Yeah. For sure. So that's FKFX. I have to slowly talk my way through that. And their new plugin, the Obvious Filter, which is free to get to download and use, but they would appreciate your subscription through their Patreon page, which is just patreon.com/FKFX. The website is coming soon. So go. I'm going to have we've got some time this weekend to maybe have a play with one of those. Right.
Just remember, hit the play button.
Yes, indeed, hit play. So let's see. We've got another new bit of software from our friends at UVI. This is an expansion pack for the Falcon instrument, which I think everybody knows we are, or I certainly am, very fond of. Which I believe I also saw something in my inbox or somewhere today that said that's just had an update as well to fix a few bugs and add a few things. But this is Inner Dimensions, and again, I wish they'd just default the sound on this. So Inner Dimensions is mined from the shadowy halls of minimal techno and the introspective and surreal contrasts of dark cinema. It delivers 120 patches ranging from unfolding rhythmic arpeggios to moody textural pianos, deep bass sequences, and moving analog leads to tonal atmospheric pads and shimmering noise fields. Who writes this stuff, honestly? Right, let's have a listen to it, shall we? This hopefully will work. Hopefully I did turn the volume on. Are we going to go? There we go. You getting audio there, yeah? Yeah, good. There's kind of a brief little overview of what it can do. It is a Falcon expansion set. It's not a sample library. It uses all of the the internal functionality of Falcon, which is a great instrument. I could happily just spend all my time in that thing itself. It kind of blends, noise, and there's FM stuff in there as well, and it looks very, very nice. But I didn't get a chance to play around with this. It's only €39. Anyone got any pressing thoughts on this one?
I've got questions.
Go on then.
I
see if we can
don't
answer.
fully understand what it is. Is it a sound library?
No.
Because it's not just a sound library. Could I not make these... If I had Falcon, could I not make these sounds?
Yes, I guess that's what it's probably better described as a preset pack with a custom interface. So what you got to think of really is that with Contact you'll have a scripted interface with some of their instruments, and they've got knobs and buttons and things that pertain to the actual sounds you've got there. But obviously with Contact it's just samples behind there. With Falcon you've got sampling, you've got FM synthesis, you've got virtual analog synthesis, you've got granular synthesis, you've got an absolute ton of different effects and all of that. So I guess in theory, yes, you could do this yourself, but you would have to program all the patches and also program the interface to use those patches in this particular way. So I'd rather pay.
The only thing that it adds is an interface. That's really.
If you're going to, I guess,
I'm just trying to understand it. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
It's basically somebody's done a whole bunch of patch design as they would on any synthesizer, given it a nice funky interface to enable you to very quickly manipulate, I guess, a whole bunch of settings underneath the skin and do it that way. I mean, it's €39. I'd say I'd rather pay somebody to let me do that. Yeah. It does actually have samples in there, a couple of thousand of them, but compared to their other libraries, it's quite small. I don't know if this is limited by the sounds that it makes. They seem to be obviously pushing this to a techno market. Manny, with your kind of programming head on, did this appeal to you? Is this?
So I listened to all the sound demos. I do have Falcon. It actually was the very first soft synth I ever bought. And I quite like it. I just don't like working in it for the reasons that I mentioned. Mice don't grok with me. Relative to what I heard, it sounded like some good work. I am not a preset pack purchaser type of thing. Although what's nice about hearing the demos is that, like they always say, I always like to be inspired by hearing, hey, now that's really cool. I'm going to do something different with that. Like Ben, I was trying to figure out exactly what the interface portion of it was, because I showed you sort of that 4D grid blending the layers, type thing going on. Which if that is some real-time control you can have over things, that would be useful. So just to the point of listening to the sounds and the demos that were available, like I say, in the genre that they were representing, it sounded like there's reasonable stuff there. Relative to if it's a value for you, it's just depends how much of a programmer are you in diving into that synth in the first place. Yeah,
absolutely. Cryss, did this appeal to you at all?
I don't have Falcon, so it's probably not something I'd be looking into too deeply right now, unless I end up getting it someday, which might be a possibility.
Probably.
I don't think this is something I would go for. They do some really good Falcon expansion packs, and they are for 30 something euro, which is probably about £35, I think. It's not a lot of money, and it saves me the job of kind of learning how to do it, which of course I know some people are more inclined to do that. I'm not. I'm lazy. I hold my hands up.
Well, isn't it?
Yeah, but what I like is somebody giving me something like this and then get inspired by it and then dig under the hood. But I need to buy this first to kind of get me into that thing. Otherwise, I have no idea how to script front panels for a start. This is. I think this is a fairly narrow appeal, those kinds of sounds, but interesting nonetheless.
I have another question.
Go on.
It says in one of the videos I watched, it says that you've got like a deep level of editing, as you have with all Falcon, whatever they are, extensions or whatever. Now, is that synth anthology? Would that, if I put that into Falcon, would I be able to edit that like deeply instead of the limited editing I have in the workstation?
Absolutely. So right. you just turn the scripted panel off, and what it does is it then exposes all of the elements of Falcon that are being used in that patch or whatever. Yeah. So obviously with something like that sound anthology, it's sample based, so a lot of it will be all the oscillators will be sample oscillators, but you can go in and mess around to your heart's content.
Wow.
What you can't do that in the UVI workstation, which is just basically the playback device. But Falcon allows you to kind of flip that panel off and expose everything that's underneath there, and then you can go in and do your own thing.
That's probably a reason enough to buy it.
Yeah. And you can build your own front panels very simply. They're not obviously don't have the kind of graphical qualities that this has, but you can build a panel by putting knobs and faders and stuff like onto a screen. That's it, and then you can just assign those to various functions. So I've barely scratched the surface, and I've had Falcon since day one, but it's a very, very powerful thing. And those kinds of additions are welcome for €39. Can't go wrong. I think actually no. There's going to be we've got another effect that I want to get in because we haven't spoken about this, and it's been on the list for a couple of weeks. I know that Cryss mentioned it just a little while ago. I'm going to have to defer to you guys if you. I mean, I'm hoping Cryss can probably save us on here. This is Rift, which is the cutting edge hybrid distortion. A lovely website, I have to say, and I'm sharing this with you now. It's a very, very nice website from that point of view. It's currently on offer at $75. I'm not even going to bother trying to kind of unpick all of this marketing jargon here, but it seems like it can do some really very cool things. There's physical modeling in there, morphing filters, and all sorts of things going on. Cryss, this was something you brought to our attention. Did you get a copy of this, and can you tell us a bit more about it?
I ended up not. We had covered their free filter. So part of this larger plugin includes a filter, which a month ago or so, like went to the Tau filter, and that came out, and there was just kind of a rash of free filters going about. Came out, and I downloaded that and checked it out, and it was quite interesting. I think they've got a lot of great ideas, and then this is married. The filter itself is part of a bigger program which has like a bipolar distortion or saturation, whatever you want to call it. Algorithm in it, and then again all the other stuff. I'd see this as again another very creative plugin. Where I have a harder time is that there's so many plugins that do that. Last week we covered, or the week before, I don't remember, Infiltrator. I think that was what it was called. Which does this stuff, and then also a lot more like phasing and flanging and things like that. So there's a lot more of these plugins coming out with the multi-segment envelopes, like you can see it going there. This does have a very interesting distortion engine, and I think they've done a great job with this. Where it's getting a little bit more difficult is, do I put my money into this? And I think that probably the regular cost, which is $129, is probably a little bit high for a brand new company. And what I've noticed also on the forums is they're getting kind of hit hard for the price. I'm not saying that it's not a great plugin, because it is, but that's been kind of my takeaway of it. And I'm watching them. I'd like to see what else they do, because I do think they did a really good job with this plugin.
Yeah, Manny, did you get a chance to play with this one?
Well, unfortunately, they don't have a demo of it. You can download the free filter portion of it. So again, I could only listen to the audio examples. Distortions aren't something that I find a lot of use for, just for the type of stuff that I do. FM can sound as distorted as you want, on demand. So, so I just looked at the website and whatnot. So,
Ben.
I downloaded.
You downloaded, but you haven't used it.
No, I downloaded the free one.
Okay.
And I thought that was pretty good. It actually sent me after me messing about with the obvious thing. I chilled out a little bit with this and did some pads and automated the spatial effects and it sounded really nice. I think for a free filter, it was one of the nicer sounding ones, and I quite liked it. Like Manny, again, I don't really use a lot of distortion, so I haven't really got much need for the full blown thing. But I'll definitely use that filter. It's very good. Yeah.
Good. Well, that's Minimal Audio. So it's www.minimal.audio. It's called the Rift, and it looks very, very nice. So if it works as nice as it looks, it should be a very nice thing. Let's do one more bit of software. Now, I did send this link very late on today, so you may or may not have got this, but I'll kind of wing this one because this one did interest me. This literally came onto my radar this morning, my time. It's from a company called E-Phonic, and it's an instrument called the Invader 2. It's a polyphonic synthesizer, software synthesizer. Let me just get the right screen up here. So there we go. It's pay what you want, which starting at $5 or £5 or €5. And you can pay more if you think it's going to be worth more to you. It's an 8-voice polyphonic synthesizer, knob per function interface, 2 oscillators plus a sub oscillator, polyphonic stereo unison, with optional low CP unison emulation mode, which I thought was quite interesting. Comes with over 200 presets built in, lots of fun toys to play with, 16-step sequencer and arpeggiator, stereo noise generator, ring mods. And I thought the demo, I'm pretty damn certain I pressed the thing. Let's just test. It sounds really nice. This is all Invader 2. What I liked about this, I had to play with I bought it, and it seems to do a really wide range of stuff. Very nice. That gives you an idea of the sonics. Let's just show you the interface, because I think, again, this is one of the things that I really love is a nice, clean, simple interface, and this is all of that. It's just it looks very kind of mini Moog like, I guess, in a way, with everything kind of laid out left to right. But it's just a really nice, clean, no fuss interface. And it just sounds really good, and it's pay what you want. It starts at $5, but of course you can pay more. Did anybody else get a chance to have a play with this, or shall we just move on?
Well, can I tell you about my little disaster with it?
Oh, go on then. I'm sitting. Let me just get a drink. Here we go.
I got in from rehearsals, and I thought I'll have a look through the show topics, because I like being prepared. Give myself at least an hour and a half before the show, and I'm looking through, and I've been looking at other things as well. I always look at synths and stuff, like news and what have you. And after I'd done a bit of researching, I thought, what was that soft synth? So I got on my computer and I started downloading demos of the other things and trying them out, and I thought, did Robbie put that soft synth in the notes, or is that something else I've come across? So I never got to try it, and when I looked at the list on my computer, it wasn't even there. It wasn't on the list. So
that's my fault.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I'm gutted.
I just threw it into Messenger, I think, and it was late on in the day, here anyway, and I didn't get a chance to try it, but I just thought...
Well, that explains it. I thought I was going insane. But it sounds really good. And pay what you want, so that's a brilliant idea. That's better than the Patreon idea that they had earlier, but it's whether anybody's going to do it.
Yeah. It's something that... who is it? Together Audio. I bought, what is it? Opzilla, which is that 4-op FM synth that they did, which also has some samples in there that you can use for the attack portions of the sound, and it's really cool. And they have a very similar kind of pay what you want ethic, and it's really, really good stuff. And maybe this is something we can come back to next week, and once we've had a play with it, because it is just €5 or $5, and it sounds really nice. I was flicking through the presets kind of as I was getting to the end of the day job, and just kind of wrapping things up. I loaded it up and started playing through it, and it is really nice for what it is. Anybody else got any thoughts on this before we move on?
I missed notification.
Sorry. That's fine. No, it was late in the day.
But I have to say, the short demo, that sounded pretty good. I mean,
Nice.
From a value standpoint, the interface, somebody mentioned in the chat, I thought, oh God, that looks like the cat.
That's true.
I thought it sounded nice, and it sounded pretty cool. And hey, $5. I mean, really?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's very good. All right then. So that's if you want to get hold of that, it's from E-Phonic.com. So it's E-Phonic.com, and it's Invader. They also do a few other things in there, so check those out as well. But yeah, it's pay what you want. They suggest 25, but you can go down to 5, or you can go up if you feel it's really that good. We will come back to a bit of software a little bit later on, but there is a couple of pieces of hardware news that I wanted to get into before we come to kind of grill Manny in depth. The first one, I guess, is probably the most exciting one all round, is the announcement from Black Corporation that they are going to be doing essentially what is a Jupiter 8 clone. Now, the name has probably caused more kerfuffle than the actual instrument itself, because A, nobody quite knows how you say it, and B, nobody quite knows why it's called that. And I did a bit of digging before we came on air, and actually found that.
I thought you were going to play in Vonnegut.
Well, that did come up, but I had a link somewhere and I've lost it now. But basically, ISE-NIN is the surname of a Russian poet, and the guy behind Black Corporation, I think his name is Boris, is Russian, and has hinted that is the inspiration for the name. So it really has nothing to do. There's no kind of cryptic stuff going on there. But anyway, let's forget the name. This is the fact that Black Corporation have delivered some great stuff with the Descartes Dream and the Kijimi, is that how you pronounce it, and a couple of other bits. This now looks like all they've done is they've released this picture and said that it will go on to a pre-sale. Let me just bring this a little bit bigger into the screen. It's going to go on pre-sale, I think, from next week. So it's quite obviously a clone of the Jupiter 8. Nobody knows how much.
Replicant. It's a replicant.
Or a replicant. Oh, yes, indeed. But yeah, I mean, the colour schemes and the layouts kind of suggest that it's, at the very least, inspired by. Do we need something like this? Which is probably, if we're going to guess about the prices, and that's probably not fair, but their other stuff is probably going to be around the $3,000 to $4,000 / mark, because that's kind of what the other stuff costs. Do we need something that does the Jupiter 8 at that price? Anyone?
But I was like jumping up and down when I saw this. But
really?
Then, because they did such a good job of the CS81. I just thought, it's going to be like a Jupiter 8 with bells and whistles, I don't mean an FM section. I mean, it's gonna go above and beyond like what a Jupiter 8 can do. And I thought, I'd have that. But then thinking about it, There's a lot of Jupiter 8 options, isn't there? You've got them in your cloud. You've got like nearly everything Roland's made recently has got a Jupiter 8 thing in it. My Integra 7 does a really convincing Jupiter 8. You know, it's pretty decent. So, but it's analog. It's I don't know. It's very tempting, but for the amount of money, I think.
Well, we have to be fair and say that we don't know how much this is going to be, because
I reckon it will be around that though.
Yeah.
But
it should be pretty contemporary to the Deckard's Dream, I would think.
Yeah. And there's no indication whether this will be just available pre-built, because their other stuff, a lot of it has been available in kit form as well, so that you can save yourself a few pounds, euros, dollars by building the thing yourself. But obviously, a lot of people don't or aren't any good at that.
Wagyu's just said that there are a lot of Jupiter 8s, but not many in hardware. I suppose the only other thing that comes close to hardware is the boutique stuff, isn't it? That's
System 8.
Yeah, so you got the System 8, which has got the plug outs, and then obviously you got the Jupiter XM. Quite how it is or does anything Jupiter-esque is questionable, and the JP08 boutiques. I've said this many times before. How dare they release something called the JP08 and it only be a 4-voice? I mean, really, that was just a massive slap in the face. I guess in terms of hardware, then this is going to be one of very few options out there if you want a genuine hardware clone of the Jupiter 8. Why Roland still haven't jumped on this and done something properly about it? The demand is so much. But yeah,
I was going to say a couple things. First of all, it depends on the price. I mean, if it's similar to Deckard's Dreams, it's not unreasonable. I mean, the Kajimi is their most expensive piece of kit.
Yeah.
But I thought the Deckard's was like $2,000. So if it's in that price point, if you need to have hardware, it's not that unreasonable given what Jupiters have inflated up to. But again, it's like you need that sound in that format, because as Ben mentioned and as in the chat, some of the digital recreations of this stuff is eminently usable and in a track indistinguishable. And if you can't have it in front of you with all those wonderful colored buttons, what's the point? But I'm sure it's going to sound good, because the Deckard sounds great. The fact it's going to have MPE support and all the other doodads that go along with that, again, it's a little bit is kind of a neat thing as well. So I think it's going to come a little bit what the price is going to come in at something like that, and if you dig the JP sound.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because if you want a Jupiter 8, a genuine Jupiter 8, you've got to have a lot of money in your back pocket. And if this is even if this is 4,000 whatever euros, dollars, it's still less than a tenth of what you would pay probably now market price for a Jupiter 8, because they're just being sold for silly money these days. So yeah, I guess if you are in the market for a hardware Jupiter 8, then this is actually probably going to be quite cheap.
I like the way that the 19-inch rack is the preferred format as well. There's not enough 19-inch rack stuff being made now.
Just thought I'd share this. This is where I got the information about the name from. So according to Roman, the name is a reference to the Russian poet Sergei Yesenin, who lived between 1895 and 1925, so he died when he was 30. Wow. Notable for his lyrical evocations of and nostalgia for the village life of his childhood. Go figure, but call it what you like. It is essentially a Jupiter 8 clone, and we shall look forward to hearing and seeing more about that. Apparently it goes on pre-sale next week on the Black Corporation website, which is, I believe, let me just check. I don't know, what is the Black Corporation? I haven't got the Black Corporation's website address. It's probably just blackcorporation.com.
Yeah.
Anyway, Google it. I don't have to give you the addresses.
Yeah, we can look forward to the demos of that, can't we? And
Yes, very much. And the information was actually announced on Instagram, which was an interesting tactic. Yeah, black-corporation.com if you want to go and see that. And apparently pre-orders will start next week on that website. So yeah, keep an eye open there.
Yeah.
Right. The other piece of hardware news, which is interesting, I can see some people getting very excited about this. I'm deeply cynical about it. We shall explain that in a second. But you remember a little while ago we talked about the Nonlinear Labs C15 and what a wonderful sounding, looking instrument it was. But the big question that was kind of on all of our lips was, where the hell was the MIDI? It didn't have MIDI. And again, it was one of those things where more people were complaining about its lack of MIDI than actually looking in on what this thing could actually do. So now we've got the Update Studio package, which is available now. It's a software upgrade, and there is also, depending on your needs, a hardware edition that now gives full MIDI connectivity to the Nonlinear Labs C15. It basically uses the USB port on the rear of the machine, and if you want to connect it to a computer via USB, then you get the full MIDI over USB experience. However, if you want to connect it to something with a 5-pin MIDI connection, you need to buy this little adapter. I didn't get the price of the adapter, but given that there was this fuss about the fact that it didn't have MIDI out of the box, I find it slightly galling that now you're kind of expected to pay a little bit more, particularly because this synth isn't cheap in itself. However, that said, it is a remarkable synthesizer with some remarkable functionality, and I think it's Michael Whalen in our group has got one of these and absolutely loves it. And if Michael gets enthusiastic about it, you know it's going to be pretty damn good. But the thing that kind of rankled with me is that at the time, the guy that came up with this, who was the guy who was initially behind Native Instruments, whose name escapes me.
Stephen Smith in it.
That's it, yeah. He said the reason it didn't have MIDI is because of all of the things it did. MIDI just kind of wasn't up to doing, what the C15 was going to throw at it. And so rather than put something in there that would fall over and maybe not perform very well, he decided not to put it in at all. And yet here we are, June 3rd, 2021, and we now have this MIDI update. Thoughts?
I think a lot of Apple users can
yeah, relatable.
It's like you dump a whole bunch of money into something that's very sleek and beautiful and works really well, and then you got to have a stupid white dongle hanging off of it, and or in this case at least it looks nice with the wood, but I think worse than the price of having to buy something else with it, because it is a premium synthesizer, and I imagine the people that own it will buy it. It's just the hassle of having the dongle on it to get your MIDI. But at least it is, it's better that they offer it than not. So
this is true. I'm just trying to get this video up here because I just want to show people. Let me do this because we can actually show. They did a demonstration video. Where are we? Nonlinear Labs C15. There we go. Right, let's share this with everyone. So, yeah, you plug it into the USB port at the back, and then you've got this little box that attaches. And then it did show you somewhere. Yeah, so the USB host interface can be connected to different devices. So you plug in the USB cable on the rear, and then you just plug it into, say, for example, there, the Novation circuit. But if you want 5-pin, you have to buy this adapter that has USB on one end and MIDI on the other. Which begs the question, why didn't they speak to our friends at CME and get some kind of WIDI implementation in there? You see, missed opportunities. I mean, the C15 is a remarkable instrument, and it does seem that user influence has come to bear on this. Manny, have you ever played one of these things?
I was able to play with one for a little over an hour at the last NAMM that was held.
Oh yes.
And it's a cool instrument, and I like the paradigm as a performance instrument. Okay, and so as much as your first thought is the lack of interfacing is like, how could you possibly in something at this price point? They wanted to go a little left field, with it, and so the fact that you just are going to record the output, and that's great, because it's a very playable instrument. In a weird way, you should appreciate it's basically could be set up very much from a GX1 type of algorithm. The comb filtering on it's really cool. So like it's a unique sounding thing. The double ribbons, the unique take on the pitch bender. It was made as a performance instrument. So I understand why, if it was going to mess up the playability of it, if they were going to leave MIDI off of it at the beginning, that makes sense. Because one of the things that's been so obvious to me now, as we are getting close to MIDI 2.0 being out, and me having to interface all these various gears here, okay, is and having more complex synths and controllers out there. I mean, MPE is a kludge, and it works nice, but it's a data stream nightmare. And so since all the power is kind of going that way, the CPU overhead, you got to take an account to. I'm going to give you a classic example. It's like Yamaha and the X5. They made it do everything, and then it really messed up how it did some basic functions until they fixed things for firmware. So I understand why, especially for initial release as a new instrument, that makes sense. That said, at some point you do have to have some connectivity, to the real world. Although, again, why would I be driving this from a MIDI sequence? You wouldn't.
Yeah.
You'd be playing it live. Now,
yes,
to be able to play other things from it, that's very useful. So the fact they finally got it, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Does this make you want to buy one of these, Cryss? Would this now swing your opinion on this? I mean, given that you had the money, say.
I think it is a very interesting instrument. The topic about this that I keep thinking about, though, is not so much in the instrument of it itself, but the philosophies of companies or designers and how they go about doing things and how much they are accepting outside input into it. And so we can see that on both sides, there's been some very successful people, people that have been really clued into the community, like, hey, let's get that thing in here that we didn't think about, but somebody on the forum thought it was a good idea, and it turns out everybody thinks it's a great idea, but we didn't come up with it. And so that can be implemented really well into product development. And there's other times where you really need like somebody, usually, or a small team, but usually it's somebody to go, we have to get to this place, let's drive it. And then you have somebody like a Steve Jobs or Elon Musk that just push it and really hard in one direction without the kind of, waffling back and forth with everybody's opinions about it. The problem with people that are on that side is that they got to know when to kind of bring in some outside and to see what the rest of the tribe thinks about it. And the tribe doesn't always have good ideas, and it takes some wisdom to figure out which is good and what should be implemented and what should not. But this would be one of those interesting scenarios where there was some very obvious thing. I mean, even if it's nothing other than, I'm not talking about controlling all your knobs, that has a whole bunch of buttons, but every single function from MIDI on that, I think probably would have saved them a lot of hassle if they just, with USB, said, hey, yeah, you can send notes out from your DAW to here, or you can record MIDI notes from this keyboard as you perform on it. Just that little bit would have made it so much more desirable of an instrument. I'm glad that at least after the fact they decided to do that. But just from a consumer perspective, like to see, I mean, there's compromises, there's decisions to be made. What do you put into a product? What do you leave out? And there's some companies that are doing a really good job at that, figuring out how to navigate that. But there's some curious examples, like the Japanese companies tend to be the ones that put a whole bunch of features in and then leave out two things that you need really bad, like Aftertouch or something like that. Yeah. And then you have some other of these small companies that are just so focused and getting a thing, but they lose sight of what do people really want to buy and what features does it need to have in it, and it can come from both ends. So walking that narrow middle ground of like, what do we press forward with our vision and where are we kind of taking some outside ideas is really interesting thing. And here we see it played out because in my opinion, the narrowness of no, it's just going to be a performance instrument probably didn't play out well for them, and I'm glad that at least they've backtracked on this and have opened it up for those that need that.
Yeah, it's also worth pointing out that this software update also brings an internal digital audio recorder as well as this MIDI compatibility. So there's more to it than just the MIDI thing. And I think like in their defense, when this came out, it was billed as a performance instrument. You don't want this. This isn't a controller. This is this is akin to a piano. You don't buy a piano and say where the hell is the MIDI on a piano. It's a performance instrument. So yeah, it kind of cuts both ways. But like you say, nice to see that they've done it, and now we have the option. If we're in the marketplace for one of these, we now have that option, and well done. I don't know the MIDI bridge. Let's see. I'm just trying to figure out how much that was, and that was one thing I didn't check. Because that's the other thing with the C15 is they've got this very interesting pricing model, which is something that is coming up quite a bit today. You have this kind of rent to own thing, so it's €4,000 to buy, but you can. They have a buyback plan, so if you don't like it, you can sell it back to them, and they just take a percentage off and then refund you the difference. But I was just trying to see what the price was for this add-on.
I actually was thinking it's like for high-end, unique instruments, that's something companies should embrace more, because I think because look. You always worry where you're going to put down a lot of money for something, okay? And you're thinking, am I going to get my value out of it? Is it going to be what I anticipate is going to work the way I want? And if it does, obviously you'll keep it. It's no big deal. But it's like you always wonder if you're going to pull the trigger on that. It's almost like, like in L.A., back in the day, if I wanted to test something out, I just call studio instrument rentals. I'd take it for a weekend and see what, it's kind of deal. Yeah. And you can't really do that anymore. So I thought, that is of interest, to me, because you could drive it for a month or two, 6 months here, and you don't have to worry about the other aspect of it. So for high end stuff, maybe that's a business model that should be more looked into.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's really interesting that we are seeing a lot of different business models for different, whether it's hardware instruments or software instruments, that give people an option to get into this stuff and not break the bank, but also at the same time developers and creators can create stuff and still get a decent amount of income without having to give stuff away, which is, I'm all for it. It's good stuff. Anyway, there you go. That's the Nonlinear Labs update. It's a software update and also a little hardware edition if you need it for MIDI connectivity and an internal digital recorder. So we've got one more news topic to go, and this one is quite relevant to our guest. So for those of you that don't know who Manny Fernandez is, and I'm someone that has kind of mentioned his name many times on this show before, if you really want to kind of get into to learn about who Manny is and his history, can I recommend our wonderful Sound on Sound podcast that we did a little while back, where I grilled Manny on his background and his history, and he opened up to us fantastically and told some wonderful stories. But if you really want to kind of know about the man himself, go there. But let's just say very briefly that after a while learning synthesizer technology through the old analog methods, happened across FM synthesis through the Synclavier and through the Yamaha DX7, and ended up with this really long relationship working with not just Yamaha, but very, very well known with Yamaha, making sounds for the DX7s and the SY series, the FS1R modules, the DX200, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and then of course later on and more recently Montage, MODX and Reface DX. but also working on the VL series as well. I could go on, and we'd take up a lot of time on the show, so go over to the Sound on Sound podcast and have a listen to that. However, we will speak to Manny about his FM history in a little while, but one kind of nice little segue into that is our last news topic, which is the news that the folks at Tracktion have finally released this new synthesizer plugin called, interestingly, FM, or FM, F''M, which I guess is a play on an abbreviation of the the curse words. It's an 11 operator FM synthesizer with lots of very interesting routing and matrices going on there, lots of additional features, and I have not downloaded this yet. I haven't really looked into it. However, our guest here was involved to a degree around the beta stages of the application. So maybe, Manny, you can tell us a little bit about what FM, the synthesizer, is all about.
Alrighty. Well, basically, as Otto Z said in the chat, things had not been updated really in a long time along the paths of some of the prior virtual FM synthesizers, and Tracktion and Wolfram just basically said, if no one's going to do it, kind of guess FM we'll do it.
Yeah.
And so they took it on, and so I had an opportunity to learn about this last August, and they sent me the beta stuff, and I played around with it. So just in full disclosure, at the stage that it did not play well with my software setup. So I could not, in good conscience, officially offer my participation because I was worried about being able to produce things, functional to my level of acceptability in the time frame that they wanted.
Sure.
But I did keep playing with it, and since it was officially released on Monday, I've spent a lot of time with it, getting back into it, because now, of course, it's been optimized and it's working well for me now to go in and dive in. If people are familiar with FM8, as you can see, it borrows that general interface. Mm-hmm. But what they decided to do with this is really build, quote, the ultimate FM synthesizer, but it becomes more than that because of the architecture. So specifically, it has 2 filter channels for outputs. You have samples available as a modulator and a carrier. And if you go through the presets, you'll find that the approach is everything from full-blown FM to straightforward virtual analog and the hybrids in between. Mm-hmm. The thing that's really cool is that they have made everything pretty much modulatable by anything.
Yeah.
And if you go into some of the drop-down lists, it's scores long. I mean, thankfully they do have an assignment method that streamlines it when you're setting up programs, but you can dive in and get lost for a long, long time. It's got all the things you would expect of high-level software. Individual envelope slopes are adjustable. You have multi-stages. You can loop the envelopes. You have feedback on every operator. So from a FM aficionado's playground, they really ticked, I'm going to say almost all the boxes. Yeah. And so I'm glad it's finally out. I know a lot of people, on the boards that knew about it and stuff when it was taking so long. I'm all for holding it till it's right. So,
yeah.
So even though it took longer than some of us expected, I think they've done a very nice implementation here. So if that's your bag, and you don't mind working in the soft synth environment, I gotta say it's ridiculously affordable.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about it because it's quite good. I'm a happy guy.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, the interface is lovely and clean and obvious, and this matrix here where you can just click on that square in between, and then just I think you just slide your mouse up, and the rate the link is made, and then the rate of modulation is depending on how you drag it. It seems very simple and intuitive, but at the same time very complex and deep, which of course FM is kind of known to be. Cryss, Ben, did you get a chance to listen to this, play with this? Any thoughts on this one? Someone's
you're
on
muted,
mute.
Ben.
Drink! You were saying, Ben?
Yeah, it all went wrong. I tried to download the demo and it just says queued. It's just queued all the time.
Oh, right.
I've left it on in the background and not been able to actually get it. So, and I was quite looking forward to it, really, because it does seem quite interesting. It is like, it does seem to be a pretty comprehensive take on what you can do with FM. I'm no expert, but 11 operators seems a bit excessive, like. But if you can use them, then they're there, aren't they? You know, you can turn them off if you don't. So, yeah, I look forward to trying it. Definitely.
So
Cryss?
I was kind of wondering, and I've been waiting and holding off. All I've heard was just the Tracktion demo of it, which I mean, we were kind of talking about. It's like, well, this is not really hitting home as far as music that I like to listen to. So the interface, like you said, Robbie, looks gorgeous. I mean, I think they did a great job with that. Interesting operator setup, which and I've seen FM8, so. But Manny, I was curious, just because I don't spend a lot of time with FM. It's something that I'm planning to hopefully do sometime this year. We just have that problem of nobody's got the Kodomo Essence FM in stock, and so I haven't really seen one. I wanted to wait to get the Mark II, but that's something that is a plan, probably my next hardware purchase, whenever that will be. But for this plugin, is this something worth getting? And a secondary question with this, so with analog synthesizers, obviously the architecture, every little bit of that circuitry does something. When we get into the digital domain, is this purely like we're playing with sine waves, and obviously this does other waveforms as well, but from a tone perspective, how is the tone of this? Because I wasn't as thrilled by the demo, but I'm holding out thinking maybe this is just an issue with I'm not caring for the style of the demo. How would you compare this to the Essence FM?
Okay. One of the things that always drives developers, manufacturers crazy is, right, what are you going to do for a demo that A, is going to highlight the instrument and then strike a chord with the public, right? So the Essence, they did something which was they were playing to what is really the key recognizable FM type of sound. They went with a lot of, percussive, defined bandwidths, layered, rhythmic stuff. So you go, okay, that's an FM synthesizer. In a way, they kind of said, I'm going to make a modern TX 816 demo. Okay, and so it's very obvious what it's doing. With the demos that they kind of have in FM, it's much more of a blur, and they didn't really go specifically aggressive classic FM. They sort of played in a middle sonic space because, again, here's what's cool about the synth, and it addresses a little bit about what the operators do, okay, and why there are 11. I'm trying to think of a way that I can start this because it's going to tie into the Essence, and I don't want to get this like a lost in the weeds thing. The biggest difference between the two paradigms of them, okay, is they want massive layering with the Essence, okay, and it has a lot of capability in modulatable and stuff, and it's got a great user interface. It's about interface and layering, okay. That's a quick summary of it. FM is like, I want the ultimate engine, okay. So for example, you can only support 4 layers, and you have relatively standard polyphony in a single instance of it as a plugin, whereas the Essence, you got 300 voices, and you can stack 128 plus layers in the thing, all simultaneous or all splits and all that kind of stuff, and you can't even approach that type of thing in FM. So one of the things that has been talked about in terms of quirks of various systems, to be able for Stefan to pull that off in the Essence, there's optimizations in the engine for certain things. So we've talked about the frequency drift in the ratio tunings, because potentially he can run all his envelopes in synchrony, triggering 128 notes at once. Okay, that's a CPU load. So he's got to get those resources from somewhere. So in FM, where they're maximizing everything on the FM engine, okay, you're not going to get all the layering because it's keeping all the precision in the engine. So there's a little bit of philosophical difference there. Okay, so they are going to play in some different spaces. So getting to the 11 operators thing, it's 8-op FM, and it's 2 sample-based oscillators and a noise source. Because the way it's set up, okay, without even touching the 8 operators, okay, you could use it as a rompler. You can load your own samples in. There's 2 filters, okay, so you've got a noise source, 2 oscillators. It includes some samples of known instruments in its library. So if you just need a general purpose VA, you can do that. Now some of the sounds are on that. One of the programmers, his entire sound bank uses no FM, okay, to just show that the instrument is that versatile. Now, on the other hand, if you want to ignore all that stuff completely, and again, go in and do exactly what Kodamo did, you can do that. And in general, there are some of the presets in there. They just didn't really use those for the demo. So it's all in there. You just have to spend the time to do it. So they're 2 totally different approaches on what you want to do. Because, as I told you, I don't like working in the computer environment. I mean, thankfully, you hold down a key, you can direct 10 key enter your parameter values, so you don't have to mouse around. So that is useful for me. So I'm glad that they included that in FM. That said, scooting around on the Kodamo now, it's like so freaking fast. Just the fact that you can go in and do those things that efficiently, it's a great environment. So, as a first exposure to really getting into a deep diving system, there's a lot of that as well. It's a whole different price point, but I got to tell you, if I could, I don't know how much effort it's going to be to get my BCR thing to map to parameters in FM, because there's just so freaking many of them. But it's like, I'm already thinking, it's like, if I get a dedicated machine with a touchscreen running FM, it's like, that would be the place I'd rather deep dive. If they could literally make, a module of it with some sort of touchy knobby thing, then it's just like you could just fly over that, But right now you are stuck in the computer editor, paradigm for it. So it's still useful, but again, those are 2 different flavors of machines. Sonically, they cover much of the same territory. The filters are very, very good in FM. You have multiple filters available. You have dual filter chains. The filter in the Essence is functional, but it's basic. But again, I can layer 128 things if I want to, and they're all going to fire accurately. So just different philosophical takes on them. Yeah. Hope that answers the question.
Yes, absolutely, and that was a fantastic answer, which is why I waited to even start looking into it. I'm curious, as you're talking about drift within these FM circuits, how much is that a thing, or even with envelopes? Is that something, one of the beautiful things about analog synthesizers, and even with some analog synthesizers that use digital envelopes, you can adjust it. Of course, like an OB6 just got an update where, in that application, it's not sophisticated at all. It's all under the hood. You just have one knob, but you can actually offset your envelopes and how notes are firing. Obviously, with the Essence FM, you could probably do that manually across 128 layers, but that would take a long time. Within FM, what's the capabilities like as far as the drifting of those parameters and how much you can control that?
Well, there's 2 ways to go about it. Okay, and again, just for what do we mean by drift? The first thing is just detuning of operator pairs, operator stacks, to get harmonic movement within the basic waveform. Then you have detuning across multiple stacks, where you're doing some sort of emulation of two oscillators that don't quite track. So those areas can all be addressed independently and differently in both platforms. So both platforms have random number generators as modulation sources, and for example, in FM you could patch that to pitch, okay, or frequency fine. So if you're using a non-sine waveform, and you wanted to do a virtual analog thing, you could easily dial that in. So you could have a random pitch drift on something for on a basic situation, or you could patch that into just one of your modulators, so that when your sound decays, you hear certain amounts of beating that are different for every note. Okay, so it sort of depends on what you mean by drift. The context that it came up, and honestly, a mountain was made out of a molehill from some of the people in commenting on the Kodama forums, is that you cannot lock the ratios precisely in the essence. So if you're using a modulator carrier pair or big stack, and you have ratio relationships that are anything other than 1-to-1, as you hold and sustain a note, no matter how much you try, they are not going to be an absolute static waveform. Okay, and sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. It just depends what you're doing. So, and again, I said my piece on that in the forum, and look, it's a characterization of the instrument, and if that's what I'm giving up, to have 128 notes play all their envelopes in sync, I am willing to do that. Okay. Because the biggest thing that happens when you have CPU loads in instruments is what happens with that. So if you were trying to build a layered sound, and if I added the next layer, then all my envelope times got squirrely on the previous ones I all set up. From a programming standpoint, you'd go, it's like you'd be, kill me now. I got to start all over. So you've got to have that precision, So I understand exactly why they did that in the essence. Now, obviously, if you have a system, you can build that in. So you want, the envelopes across every note to be off a little bit. That would be great. You can program that in. And again, both synthesizers allow you to use a random number generator to modulate whatever you want. So yeah, you can build in inconsistencies. So you don't want that static thing all the time in both platforms. So it's possible to do it both ways.
Cool stuff. I'm learning. Every time I sit and listen to Manny, I learn stuff, and that's got to be good.
Could be scary.
It can. No, it is. It's frightening sometimes, because I think, God, I thought I knew something. No, I really don't.
I just want to do a little aside.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if he's still in the chat, because I saw Flux in here earlier.
He was around. Yeah,
he was around, and all this gear behind me. Okay, this is all pandemic gear. The Hydra, as you know, Robbie, I am very fond of for a couple of reasons. After I got that and was just looking to get and played in the implementation, and again was trying to find out certain behaviors that were in there, I'm trying to think who can I ask this question on. So, basically prior to the pandemic, my social media presence was non-existent. I had some stuff up that was just for things I did for Yamaha and whatnot, but I joined the Hydra synth group because it seemed like it was the informal support on it. And then just out of the blue, I started bombarding Ken with questions about things, and he's probably, I don't know what his first response was, because he's just probably thinking, what the F is this guy asking? The cool thing is that he very politely, fielded my questions, and I, asked, sent him some patches, because some things like this, whatever, and I found out some interesting things about how FM is implemented in the Hydra, which answered a lot of questions for me to find ways, to maximize and get what I want, because as I told you in the Sound on Sound thing, I will do my darndest to break your system. To find what it does that's interesting, and then leverage that to do something that I think is cool. And so the Hydra was doing some weird stuff when I was employing that. So and I needed the input. So he was very helpful in doing that. So I appreciate him putting up with me, pestering him.
He's a useful chap. He is definitely.
Yeah. And like again, I mean, and to his credit, in the forum, there is a spectrum of questions and levels, and so to be able to deal with with that takes a patience that I'm not sure I have.
Indeed.
But anyway, I just wanted to just give a shout out to Ken because I really appreciated him indulging me in my incessant technical questions that he finally sent me off to.
and I'm sure that way that he was fielding your questions and other people's is one of the many reasons I'm sure that he now enjoys, I believe, full-time employment, or certainly a decent sized amount of employment with ASM, which is it was great news to hear that, Ken, by the way, so congratulations and well done. But so that's traction.com, FM, F''EM. It's $179, which is not altogether expensive, and certainly for when you look at what it can do, it looks like an amazing piece of gear. So thank you for your insights on that.
Hey, it's on offer.
Oh, it's on offer, yes, of course.
I think it's on offer.
So,
I paid $105 US for it. I mean, come on. That's nothing.
Indeed. So let's go back. Let's go back in time. Do you remember these? Look at those.
I remember those quite well. And so when you were joking about who writes this stuff, when you're talking about the descriptions of these demos are going, it's like, I hate to tell you, that was kind of an early version of.
Just trying to get it without the glare. There we go.
Yeah.
Look at that. Now, I have to say, some of these, I bought these. Like, these are still in their cellophane wrapping with their priced old new stock or new old stock, $12.99. And then there was these, the TX81Z collector series packs. And this was really your kind of this was your way in, wasn't it? Really to working with the likes of Yamaha and all of that sound design that came from that, and that Sound Source Unlimited produced, I guess, arguably some of the best patches for that, and a bunch of other synthesizers as well. And now we find you, here we are in the 21st century. You still got, what was it, last count, 9 SY99s or something in the region of?
I have 9 SY99s. I have 4 TG77s. I've got... I've got my TX7 being repaired because I've got to keep the original 12-bit somewhere because I got rid of my original DX long ago.
Yeah.
You can see it on the shelf behind me. I bought Junkie XL's TX816.
Nice.
So I got that guy, wrapped up in there. So yeah, I have a lot of FM.
But over to your right shoulder, I believe. You've got some up-to-date stuff. You've got Hydrosynths, you've got Iridiums. We've spoken about the Essence. There's a Nord there as well. And just to the other side above your head, just it's teasing some people, is the VL. That's the VL1, isn't it?
That's the VL, yeah. The VP's not here right now.
That's gone back, has it?
Let's talk about now. I have it. It's funny story with the VP. I mean, the gist of it. As Reinhold's relocated to Hawaii, and we'd finally isolated what the issues were. And this is just a funny story, and I'm sorry to take the time.
No.
But Kent Spong will appreciate this. Vintage gear is great, except parts are a frickin' pain in the ass. And Reinhold's VP developed glitches on 2 voice cards. Which it wasn't the end of the world because we could shuffle them around, turn it into a 14-voice/7-voice synth, and it was okay. But he really wanted to get it back running. So through a pincher attack of back channels, I talked to Toshio Anita-san, the original engineer, said, "I'm looking for VP1 parts. What do you guys have in a closet?" And then the guy here in LA by the name of Paul Morte is a tech here in LA who's top level like Kent and has been involved in Yamaha. He called his old Japanese parts liaison and to say, hey, we got a guy here who's looking for parts. And over the span of 8 months, Lo and behold, we finally got a response, and they actually found the remaining inventory of extant VP parts.
No.
A handful of DSP chips, a couple of the voice cards, most importantly for Reinhold, the actual left end cap,
Yeah.
because his was actually broken. If anybody saw photos from the Yamaha 40th event they did here, where they brought his instrument and it had been dropped and a big crack on there. And actually some VL1 parts as well, because they shared the same DSPs. And they literally found all that was left. And just for future proofing, they begrudgingly agreed to sell us half the parts.
Wow.
And took forever to get here, but they finally arrived. So right now the VP is back at Paul's place here down in, he's just next to Buena Park, putting stuff in, rebuilding the boards with some of the parts, because we want to make sure that everything's working, and essentially Reinhold is future-proofed, because you know, you can't even get VL1 parts right now without pilfering another extant VL or VL7.
Yeah.
So yeah, it got very fortunate in that regard, and it's so anyway, it's when it comes back, I will show you photos, but it's actually getting a cosmetic makeover as well.
Oh, nice.
Which some people may think is sacrilege, but I think it's going to actually look really cool, because the replacement end cap is completely unpainted.
Oh, right.
So we are going to change the aesthetic of the instrument to literally be one of a kind.
Yeah,
So
and
looking forward to that.
One of a kind of a synthesizer. There's only about, I don't know.
We verified 9. So with Thor, who bought the one that came up for sale in Japan recently, there are 9 extant functioning units that we are aware of now.
Wow.
It's
So,
just amazing. Yeah.
yeah.
Because, and correct me if I'm wrong here, the VP one was never commercially released.
Well,
so every machine that exists is essentially, because then even the ones that exist aren't all the same. Is that right?
So again, there's so much misinformation and guesses on this. All right. They did make a run of them. How many they actually made and to what degree that they were officially marketed. They did have promotional materials in Japan and Europe. And they did sell them to universities and name artists in Europe. But it was kind of more along the lines of, yeah, we have this, do you want one? Then you could decide whether you wanted the programming interface or not. And so a number of the machines have them and a number of machines don't. So there are people that have fully editable VPs, and there are others that is purely a preset machines. For example, Kurt Otter of K-Pro, he has one, but it's one that he acquired that the person opted not to have it programmable. And unfortunately, his unit is in the shop and still undiagnosed what's wrong with it, and he may not be able to get the parts to fix his kind of deal. But we know there are at least 9 extant functioning copies worldwide now.
Right.
So it's probably in that aforementioned 16 to 20, what was always rumored.
Yeah.
But they did officially market it in Japan. They did officially market it in Europe, and that's how Reinhold got his.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is an incredible instrument. It's one of those instruments that I think I've kind of resigned myself to the fact that I'll never get to be in the same room as one, because they are so rare, unless I take a trip out to California and sneak into your place there. But yeah, I mean, the VP one is is this rare thing, and you've got the VLs there as well. But tell me a little bit about your experience now with these more modern machines in terms of the Hydra Synth and the Iridium, and the way that you, with your FM background, has come into this, to these machines, which are not essentially FM machines, although they have FM capabilities. How are you finding those machines compared to the stuff that you've worked on in the past?
So the reason I have all that gear is because they had some version of FM implemented in it. And actually the Nord G2 is a whole nother ball of wax, because you can do physical modeling in it as well. That's a whole topic for another time, and my level in it is not that great. But as a general purpose DSP instrument platform, that red guy is still pretty useful and state of the art. But back to the Hydra and back to the Iridium. What attracted me to them was the aspect of using wave tables in both definitions within an FM context. as a wavetable synthesizer, the Hydra is in the more like the wave station mode. It crossfades, libraries of single cycle waves, and you can do your stuff. And of course, the Iridium is very much in the Waldorf thing, where it's a wave table, where you have related waves that you scan through for harmonic movement. But you can't specify the individual stages, so they all have different flavors. So when I read about those implementations, I said, now that's something I've never had before, and that really, really intrigued me. So I ordered both of them, and the Hydra arrived much sooner than the Iridium, and so I dove right in. And compared to the classic instruments, I mean, first of all, again, kudos to ASM being a first-time manufacturer in terms of knob feel, hardware, feature, price point. I mean, Kent earlier on noted, does everybody not have a Hydra? And I got to tell you, it's an awesome value. It's a really powerful synthesizer. The interface is brilliant. They borrowed from all the right places. And it's a chameleon if you take the time to learn it. I mean, you can do ambient stuff on it. You can do classic FM stuff on it. You can. It's a modular in a box. If you want the bleepy bloop, I have some things here. I just hit a key and just see what it does. Kind of thing. Somebody's seen some of our videos and the one pitch challenges that Ken's put up in the Facebook group. It's like, it's a really cool drum box, kind of thing, because it's just got all the things. In a weird way, it's a digital Oberheim expander,
Okay,
plus,
yeah.
Kind of thing. So seeing all that capability and variance in a box, where in the old days you'd have one synth that did one of those things, right? Dedicated. There wasn't a lot of multi-synthesis systems in a box. I mean, Yamaha tried it with the EX, and of course didn't quite pull it off. The best, long-lasting variant of that whole type of thing is the Kronos, which came out of the Oasis system. But yeah, there's a gap in my hardware because, I have 1993, and basically, other than acquiring the Nord, used, everything else is 2019, 2020. That's a little weird. But fundamentally, there's not a huge difference. But just again, the power, like anything that's computer based. The power, the Iridium is fantastic, and I haven't had as much time into it as I would like, because other things just keep getting into the way. But of course, the interface is exceedingly well done. The way the knobs are laid out. So for me, the most important thing about all those new instruments is that the interfaces are very usable for me. Okay, they really thought them out well to be able to get around and moving. I know we joked about single slider on DX7, pushing a button, and obviously that was a big what the F, back in '83 when everything else was, knobby, But it's also just kind of get what you're used to and what you get the workflow in. I mean, I don't mind texting patches, for lack of a better word, because my SY99, I basically program by texting. I mean, because I do nothing but text in jump screens, text in 10 key values, hit the enter key, and hit a button for navigation. I don't use the other parts of the instrument because they're just too slow, But on the other hand, it's all since it's what you used to. I think the funniest thing that I heard from one of your past shows when you had Matt Paxley on, he started on a DX7, and when he did an analog synth for the first time, it's like, what's a knob? It's like, this knob does something, and he had the total inverse reaction to it, and so. Interfaces are important, and it's just getting used to and getting down the workflow on what you do. And for at least the gear that I have here, all of them did a fantastic job on how they interact with their engines, so that I find them very efficient to get around on to get good stuff out of.
Yeah, because I remember in one of our conversations we were talking about the Reface DX, and you said that your preferred method of programming on that was using the San Mondo spreadsheet type thing and just literally keying in values.
Right. No, exactly, because again, I am not going to mouse a parameter. Okay, if I have to, I will, but I hate it, and I more than you possibly know. And God forbid the early versions of soft synths where they literally only had the circular motion to match the knob. What the F were they thinking? Seriously? I mean, don't get me wrong. I get the concept. Ooh, we're emulating the panel. Look, okay. Thank God now it's like right, left, or up and down. So the Soundmondo editor for the Reface is great because it's just a freaking spreadsheet. Yeah. And once I saw it, I said, you just need three things here. You just got to make sure that tab goes through the field one way, shift tab goes the other way, and when I'm in the field, the up arrow and the down arrow goes up, down one, or I can just punch in a number and hit enter. And they said, sure. And they made it work. And so on that editor, I can crank out a Reface sound that's exactly what I want in 5 to 10 minutes because I know what the numbers mean.
Yeah.
The point. So now when you get to the essence, okay, again, it's all like about the navigation. And even though it's only got the 6 knobs, they're the critical ones. Mm-hmm. The fact I go touch, and I got to my operator, I'm in my envelopes, and I just turn the knob, it jumps to the stage. And if I want to do something with my finger, I can just pick it up and draw it. If I just want to do more than just, if I want to do a fine change or whatever, it's, phenomenal. It's the layering and the interface of the Kodamo in and of itself is just fantastic, regardless of what the engine, is. I saw to Flux's point is like, the renaissance in modern gear is more to UIs. Yeah, there you go. Then there's the engines because, it sounds funny coming from a guy like me. It's like, I don't know what you can give me new in a synthesis engine, and I say that from the context of there are very versatile ones out there that when you know all the nooks and crannies, they do such a wide palette to come to something that's really totally out of left field is, not likely. I mean, they're out there, but, I'll give you an example, granular synthesis. Okay. It's a really cool technology, and of course the Iridium is fantastic on it. And for doing certain things, it's so efficient, because you get this motion, you get these harmonic textures, you layer them up, and you go, how would I ever build that sound from scratch? And the thing is, it'd be so difficult to build those types of things in any other synthesis system. Yeah. So it's very, very useful. On the flip side, I'm stuck with what my core sample was. Yeah. So if you can do all this work and it's like, that's not what I want. And then you got to replicate it all in a different sample set. Mm-hmm. So as I mentioned, I'm a control freak. And so the reason why I'm an FM fan is because it's the sweet spot for me of absolute control, yet programming efficiency. Yeah. So, and all these synths give me tons of control. Mm-hmm. One of the best firmware updates that ASM did in the Hydra was the ability to go out of the 32 slots of the mod matrix up into the macros and back, so you can now literally, I don't want to say have unlimited types of matrix possibilities, but now it's really huge. So yeah.
There's a question from Wagyu in the chat room which has just come through. I think it's actually quite an interesting one, and he asks, Yamaha still seem like a sleeping giant. They opened the Idea Scale site some years back. Do you feel that the cogs are in motion from the feedback on there?
I have to thread the needle on this answer. So first, and publicly stated things by other representatives from Yamaha. Yamaha is a huge corporation with a huge traditional Japanese corporate structure. Okay, so they have a different philosophy than so many things. They are the opposite of what Kodamo is in terms of, being able to take input and 3 weeks later have something on. It's just not how the system works. Okay, and one of the good news is about being a company like that is that they have so much of their own manufacturing of components. Okay, so the reason why the VL was possible and even the DX was possible, that was all in their own custom chipsets. Yeah. Okay, and so they have the resources to do stuff. But they are what they are. Now, Ideascape and what all of us who have a relationship with them, when we sit down and we talk about things, they listen to everything. Okay, at the end of the day, it's the music instrument business. And a large mega corporation is always going to look at certain metrics that a company like Kodamo is not. I mean, I'm not even sure ASM did when they brought out the Hydrosynth. Okay, so it's sort of a different deal. Now, you know, I have a Montage 7 here, and you know, the Montage 7 is a fantastic instrument, which has a lot of cool things, but has some things that are definitely due to pressures of market, right? You're going to be dealing with a flagship, and it's got to do certain things to be accepted, you know. And if it's too strange or too weird, you know, you're going to get that hunt moment again.
Yeah.
That, you know, people are going to go, you know, what the heck's that all about? So it's weird. So in contrast, the culture at Korg is a lot different. Okay, they are willing, with their position in the market, to go out and do more niche, or let's call it dedicated service projects. Now, Yamaha may change their mind, okay, because they see this as, and they may not. I can't answer to that. I do know they have a fantastic set of people working for them in these areas, both from hardware development, software, and, you know, brainstorming. And, you know, I can't say what may or may not be coming out that you're going to be going, hey, you know, finally, or what the F.
Yeah.
But, you know, yes, they don't also do any rumors at all.
No.
Okay? You know, when Yamaha, you know, drops something, it's going to be done. Okay, kind of thing. Yeah, so it's different. I love the fact that Korg's you know, done what they've done with a lot of their recent releases. I mean, the hardware packaging of them drives me effing nuts, but you know, the fact that you've got, you know, these 3 engines out there, you know, is kind of cool, because I always would love to have some of the individual parts out of a Kronos, you know, in there. You know, I would have an Op 6 if it wasn't built the way it was.
Yeah.
You know, which is, it sounds great and it's very versatile. You know, I can do everything it does. I won't say everything it does, but I can do so much of what it does in FM. You know, and so, you know, and now I have the interface of my choice.
Yeah.
You know, kind of keyboard. I'm sorry, you know, controller of my choice. You know, which is right now, my setup is my Montage and the Hydra are merged together, depending on whether I need the Poly AT or not. But anyway, off to that. So Yamaha always has something in the books, but they're always going to release it on their schedule and when it's ready. And when it's ready, they are very traditional in that thing. And you know, for better or worse, you know, they went a long time between having success with the DX7 and having success with the original motif.
Yeah.
You know, they did a lot of great gear in between, and you know, I don't know if they've ever felt burned about what they tried to do with physical modeling, because they really tried to bring it kicking and screaming into popularization, and it just didn't fly. And it was only, in my opinion, the timing of cheap memory, so samples.
Yeah.
Nobody cared. You know, kind of deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. Sampling kind of, it killed any kind of realistic kind of synthesis, which is a shame, because VL and what the things that Korg did with physical modeling is much more than just trying to recreate acoustic instruments within a synthesizer. It's creating the stuff that cannot be created, or that couldn't have been thought of, in my opinion. Anyway, I realise I've kind of hogged you for a bit here, Cryss. Ben, have you got any specific questions that you want to throw at Manny?
I wondered, but it might end quite quickly, this question.
12.
Did you have anything to do with the sounds on the DX7 too?
Factory, no.
However, well, there you go.
Okay, so
good day.
There's two questions to that. Okay, so in terms of the original release of the factory presets, no. But at least here in the U.S., and I think they sent stuff around their other divisions afterwards, is that my first official work for Yamaha was in the context of a DX7 rescue project. Because, meaning the DX7 II came out, and to the best of my now nearly way too old recollection, about 3 or 4 months after it came out, the D50 hit.
Yeah.
And that basically was just like, holy crap.
This is
don't care
exactly
about
what
that.
I was going to ask you.
Right. So if you listen to Robbie's podcast, the whole genesis of how I finally got started with Yamaha was I copied a dozen of the popular presets of the D50 in the DX7. I mean, other than the looping at the end, including the digital native dancer.
Yeah.
I did it for a guy who owned a local music store. And that got Yamaha's attention because all of a sudden his store was selling DX7s again, and they couldn't figure out why, Mark IIs.
Yeah.
So they brought me on board to finally do programming for them in a more modern vein. Because up until that point, the DX7 II was released, I hate to say it, it was released as just a DX5. A couple of layered voices here, 2 or 3 things with unison, the unison poly thing on it. But it didn't leverage so much of the cool stuff, the micro tunings, the fractional scaling modes, the component voicings, all that kind of stuff. So I used those techniques in doing the D50 emulations. How do you make an FM synthesizer sound like it has a chorus and reverb built into it? Okay, well, you can do it.
Yeah.
And so that's what did that. So then we started doing official Yamaha support discs that they gave to all their Yamaha US dealers, where we were just doing modern sounds with all that stuff built in. So it expanded on that original work I did that was copying the D50, and then we just started filching top 40 hits and stuff like that. And if you go on to the Yamaha Synth, Behind the Synth podcast, I've done a number of things with them. We talk about that whole series. And so those discs started going around, and that's what basically resurrected the Mark II, because then you had all the stuff it already did the D50 couldn't, plus you can do that. Simultaneously with the Gray Matter doing the Mark II version of the E-board, then you had the workstation in there. Okay. So then all of a sudden it became a viable platform again. But then they realized they had to get their button gear. And so that led to the V50, and for those who are real nerds, the canceled at the last minute V80, which then led to the SY99 and the SY77 and all that kind of stuff. So so the first synthesizer that had my official shipping factory presets in it was the SY77. Long-winded answer.
Yeah, no, it's a brilliant answer, because it was exactly what I was going to ask, because I remember the DX7 II coming out, and it kind of not making much of an impact at the time. And then I was in the local music shop, and the guy said, like, have a listen to these new DX7 II sounds. They're like D50 sounds. I said, you can't do D50 sounds on a DX7. Don't be daft.
Sure you can.
and there they are.
Yeah. And I was there playing it. I was thinking, has this got reverb and chorus on it? And what's going on here? It's very good. So, well, it's weird how it's all come round, and I'm sat here talking to the guy who did it. It's amazing. But yeah, I wondered about that. Was it a deliberate attempt to show that that LA kind of sound is possible here as well, but then you can do more?
Right. Well, so the original literally was my friend who owns the music store out here saying, Manny, I hate to tell you, but nobody wants a DX because this is what they're selling. Why are they buying it? Sounds like these. I said, well, what if you had sounds like that for the DX? He goes, can you do that? Let me borrow the D50. Let me see. So 2 weeks later, I brought him back. Here.
Wow.
That was
really good. Yeah.
No flux. It's not witchcraft. It's just way too much time.
Would it?
I want to ask you another thing. It's funny. People's preconceptions, obviously, color everything they do in life, right? But the funny thing is that if you really blank slate it, okay, it's more intuitive than you think. And it's going to sound really foreign to people who struggle with it, because it's so hard for us to drop what we already know when we drop something new, because, human beings, we correlate data, and we always correlate it to data we already have, right? Yeah. And you've got to really let that down. And because if you can do that, it's like all of a sudden you realize it's just a different language, okay? And if you just understand that it's a different language and learn to get fluent in it, it is not so much witchcraft. It is fairly deterministic. There are some areas that are still going to make you go, huh? like any good synthesis should, honestly, like I said, I was born and bred on modular systems. I mean, the first synth I ever had was an ARP Odyssey. Okay, then after an ARP Odyssey, I had access to a full Buchla 200 system at college, and brought up in that area. Okay, it was great. What opened my eyes to digital was much more specific control of harmonics, because complex waves filtered or processed sticks you in a narrow gap. You know what I'm saying? I want to build that original oscillator. And I said this in the podcast, and I actually got to say it to him in person, which was really, really neat. What turned me on to digital synthesis was the song Delta 4 off the Synergy album of Larry Fast. He did on the Max Matthews system. Mm-hmm. And a couple of months ago, IMEAP, the place out of Philadelphia, the big museum there, had a live stream where they were dissecting all the Moog amplifier and filter behaviors. And actually Larry was on the panel there, and I got to chat with him, I said, because of you and this song, I'm into FM synthesis. He said, oh, wow. Anyway, that was a cool thing. But it actually makes sense once you play in the sandbox. It really does. And when you start realizing that an operator is just controlling a section of my harmonic region in a way I want, in ways that filters can't even begin to do, and at an efficiency level that you can't begin to match with additive, which is the ultimate version of that. For some of you super nerds out there, check out Synergia and the Synergize editor plugin. They're virtualizing the Synergy, and it's getting really close to being finished. And the original Synergy engineers, and including Hal Alice, have been involved on the listserv, putting stuff in there. And the guy who's coding it is real sharp and top line. And they're going to have a Synergy as a VST plugin, and that's a really cool synth as well. But anyway, I digress. But yeah, so you learn that it actually it's easier than you think, but it's foreign to what you already know. So you've got to drop that you got to drop it, and it's hard to do.
Yeah, I've often said to people that to begin to understand, if you've come from a subtractive analog synthesis background, do not try and apply that knowledge to this, because it's just not going to fit. And it's just like you say, a foreign language. You can't apply one to the other. Sorry, Cryss, you were going to say.
And even with subtractive, like, there's a certain amount that you just have to put hours in to figure it out, and it's no different for any sort of discipline.
Right.
I wanted to ask you something. To kind of put it set it up in the form of an analogy. With musicians and on one side of the spectrum, you have people making music that are like, the Bob Dylans and the Kurt Cobains and Willie Nelsons. I know those wouldn't normally get clumped together, but for my purpose it does. Extremely artistic people, not the most technical, but the art they make is absolutely beautiful. And on another side, you have, say, your Steve Vais, your Alan Holdsworth, or Jordan Rudess, extraordinarily technical. They still make great music, and both sides do. And there's kind of the art and the science of things, and people often find themselves on some part of the spectrum. And I was curious to get your take, because your sound design, I mean, to have heard you talk about it so much, and then also to hear your sounds, when you talk about it, you're firmly in the technical side of things, and it's, I could just sit and listen to you talk all day, to be honest. But when you hear your sounds, there's so much art in it, but I don't hear that when you talk about it. And I was curious if you might elaborate. How does the art part of it, how does the ear, the listening part of it play into your sound design?
Okay. That is a really good question. The best way I can answer it is, so you've heard me so far talk in what I would call alphabet mode, which is my knowledge of all the letters, but by which I'm going to construct a sentence, okay, or a paragraph or something. So the other aspect of it is again, so now I have, for lack of a better word, I have a sonic typewriter in my brain. Okay, it's like, now, what am I thinking of today? You know, what's striking me? You know, it's like, what do I hear in my mind's ear, you know, with a mood, an impression of a visual, that kind of thing. Yeah, so I go through that, and so when I sit down and program from scratch, that's kind of like how I do it. Okay, which is like, what am I feeling right now? What's it sound like? So yeah, I kind of hear in my brain impressions of things visual or emotional or practical. Sometimes it's funny. It's like, I used to do this. I used to take a thesaurus. I'd open the thesaurus. I'd find a word. What does that mean to me? I just say, okay, what does that sound like? Okay, let's make that.
Yeah.
You know, kind of thing. And that's the artistic, you know, part of it. You know, most of my VL sounds are hybrids of that idea interacting with the accidents that are inherent in physical modeling. Okay, so I get that vision. I start with the approach that I believe is going to get me there, and if that path is working well, we, you know, get to our destination. But the best thing about physical modeling for me is, what the hell happened there? Now that's freaking cool. Let's chase that rabbit hole. And then I thought, oh, what was I started with again? You know, now for some people, FM's that kind of thing, and that's actually kind of cool. But yeah, that's kind of you know how I do it. Now, from a professional standpoint, okay, like when we're doing sound sets, it's a whole different ball game. You have a spreadsheet. I need 15 pianos, 15 brass, 15 stuff, something layered. Blah, blah. It's a different part of that, you know. And so when you do quote professional sound design, depending on the nature of the project, you're also programming to the project. You know, so when we have essentially a specification of what we're trying to do, you know, that's going to be, you know, a certain way. So like when I was working on, you know, Montage, it's like, okay, we've got these new things coming, the new version. You have to use these new capabilities, okay, but we have free reign in what it is, you know. So for me, when we got Smart Morph, I'm like, oh, baby. Okay, you know, that's just, you know, that was really cool because we had no guidance at all other than say, find out what this does and just make sure it sounds really cool. You know, kind of deal. And the team that worked on that, we all came up with completely different approaches, you know, to that, you know. So, yeah, that's how I kind of do that.
Something that you said that resonates with me too is like when you get an instrument and you sit and you're trying to figure out ways that you can do the things that you want to do in the ways that they weren't intending you to do them, or finding those places that you're not supposed to find in a way. Not to say that they have to be harsh or experimental, but to be able to find those creative sounds in the instrument that are kind of hidden in the way in the nooks and crannies of it, so to speak. When it comes to something though, like that, you know, very well, like you know, whatever six operator FM that, you know, you've been doing forever, to the point you've mastered it in such a way that you're like, I'm just going to hit 10.65 on the keypad and it's going to be the sound that I want. I mean, that's a level of mastery. Are there still, in that area that you know so well, are there still happy accidents that you found in these other areas that you were just talking about, where like physical modeling, you're like, oh, this is something that I'm going to go in a whole nother direction now. Right. Does that still happen to you ever with FM, since you have that kind of mastery?
Absolutely. Because one of the things that, again, that makes me such a fan of FM is, it's funny. The math is very specific, and I will, you know, cop to this. Okay, if you ask me the math now, then if you ask me the math when I was into it the first 5 years, you know, forget about it. I mean, look, I was a chemistry physics major in college. Okay, we used to solve Schrodinger equations as exercises on a weekly basis in class, and now I look at it and it might as well just be hieroglyphics, right? So those days are far behind me. Okay, but I've spent 30 years putting together a correlative sonic memory. Okay, so that's why I am so efficient on that. But that said, okay, there are FM and physical modeling share this, and I think this is why I gravitated and became adept at the two of them, is that if you think of gears meshing, okay, there's very straightforward ways in which that happens, okay, but they also can collide in a way that gives a result that really is unanticipated until you then dive into it, okay. So the reason why my preferred platform still after all these years is the AFM engine and the SY99 and the SY77 is because of the feedbacks and the phase control. Because everything about harmonic intensity and movement, okay, is controlled by modulation index, phase, and ratio. You can change the characteristic of a sound in a drastic way or in a very delicate way, literally by just changing the phase of one operator, especially if it's used in feedback loops with other operators. Okay, and so the reason why I got the Kodamo, besides the polyphony and the layering, was because, look at that, I can control and modulate phase. Hugely important. So now you can start finding the cracks. So if you think about the difference between a computer monitor, okay, you know, 640 by 580, or you 4K, okay, those parameters, having access to them, give you access to the 4K level. And so it's almost like the quantum world, not to go all on people, right? The quantum realm. In a DX7, it doesn't play in that zone, but once you get those, it matters. And what you'll find is you get those happy accidents doing nothing more than nudging a feedback and nudging a phase. And all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, there's a whole nother Amazon forest there. and that's what's really cool. And so I said to Rob, it's like, you can do physical modeling in FM. Okay, a lot of my smart morph stuff that I did in the montage is of that type of thing, you know. I don't know if anybody's heard the piano thing that I did on the montage, but you know, I have a fully morphable acoustic piano that utilizes those types of concepts within the controllability that the montage has, which is huge in a real-time basis, you know. So yeah, there's tons of things still to be found, because it's like putting quarks, you know, colliding particles in an accelerator. Stuff drops out. I mean, I have an example if you guys want to hear one.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
All right, bear with me. So, again, in terms of just finding sound spaces of any engine, right? Digging in all the nooks and crannies. The SY70 and SY99 have filters. We talk about quirks of a machine. Yamaha, thank God, has digital filters in them, but they implemented them in such the most ridiculous way possible. It's just like drives you nuts. So like, no synth is perfect. You know, if you want to do certain things with the filters on the SY, it's just like you got to kill yourself to do it. So the question is how do you do filter-like behaviors purely in synthesis as opposed to utilizing the filters? And the magic bullet, as it were, of that is a resonant filter type behavior in FM. Okay, they're really difficult to do that high Q isolated harmonic isolation that sweeps through a waveform, and it's just a math thing. Okay, so I hope you can hear this okay.
Yeah.
Coming through?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
So, all right. So, again, and one of the things I do is that I use my SY as a virtual analog. So, I have some very classic pulse widthy behaviors. Okay? So, this is a relatively straightforward algorithm, single carrier. I got two stacks of operators here. The key is that the phase relationships between the two stacks are different. They cross feedback to one another, GX1 style, Rob, for you. But what's important is without changing anything but the feedbacks across these guys will make all the difference in the world to the sound. Okay? So this is the pulse width modulation version, which is what I started building on, which has the classic And you'll see here on our intra-stack stuff, we've got ops 4 and 2 basically doing a multi-operator loop. And we've also got operator 5 coming from this second stack feeding over, and we've got op 4 coming back over the other way. So here's the cool version. All we've changed is the feedback values. Okay, we were 665, 66665, and we just tweaked these up. And we went from this behavior here to this behavior here. Okay, so that's like, there's a crack, all right? And that has to specifically do because of the quarter cycle phase inversions that we have going on, that they accentuate different parts of those spectra, okay? And now with the real-time control, some are being turned off and some are being turned on. I mentioned this in the Essence live stream, okay? I do what I call subtractive FM. In other words, I'll have something that's creating a ton of harmonic content, but it's at a phase inversion to something else, and I'll use that to knock out specific areas of a spectrum to do a unique behavior. Okay, and to be able to do that, you have to have full, phase control for that kind of thing. So that's, again, neither of those two sounds in either of their versions is anything. Everybody just say that's an FM sound, because pulse width modulation is not a assumed FM behavior, let alone a high Q, literally on the edge of breakdown, sweep of harmonic content is either.
Yeah, it's excellent stuff. I'm just sitting here thinking, how do I do that? It's yeah.
Now, one of the things that's weird, and it's kind of and Chown. By the way, I want to give kudos to Suit and Tie Guy, because the fact that they got Chowning at KnobCon in 2019 and they got that lecture posted is huge. Really unfortunate. I've never met Chowning, and I literally could have killed myself when I found out a week after KnobCon that he was there doing that speech, because I would have been there in an instant had I known. Mm-hmm. And then at the subsequent NAMM, because of scheduling issues, my presentation and his were on separate days, and I could not meet him there. But he said something very powerful, which don't underestimate. Synthesis for him is all an ear thing. Okay, the math dictates it, but it's all about the ear picking the things out. Okay, and that's how I really approach things. Like I said, I learned my alphabet, but then, if I'm going to build a paragraph or I'm going to build a story, like I said to Cryss, it's like I come from it from a different end. I just have a vocabulary now that I can use, because of the experience diving in the engine, as it were. Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. Any more questions?
There was one in the chat. I'm terrible at this, but with all of Manny's amazing patches for FM and different synths, what is his most challenging synth interface architecture to date, and did he conquer it in the end? Didn't know you
architecture, no doubt, was the VL. For sure. The interface itself was not difficult, but imagine this, okay? If you were given raw pieces of metal, a drill, bamboo, and some felt, and said, all right, let's make a sound set. Okay? That's what we were given, basically, with the VL and the VP to a certain degree. The VL actually more so. The actual interface was not difficult, because honestly it essentially was a spreadsheet with some graphical things for breakpoints and level scaling and stuff like that. But correlating input to output is what took so much time. And so, like I just demonstrated on that, finding the crack on a VL when you're looking at setting a property of the read and a property of the reflection of the energy within the resonator, okay, and the degree that those feed back to one another, okay. nobody knew how that was going to sound like a saxophone. Okay, I mean, there was the theoretical, and we did have initialized patches that we built on the theoretical, based on all the research that had been done. And as you might expect, you'd be going, kind of thing. And then it was up to us to massage it. And so to the accidents point that you brought up, acoustic instruments are all very cool because they actually are on the very edge of stability. Okay, an idiot-proof stable acoustic instrument is boring as all get out. The ones that are really cool are the ones that take effort to hold in the range because now they are dynamic and playable. Okay, so that's why the modeling is so cool from a performance standpoint. Like some others in the chat, I have been waiting for my Osmos for how long? Because controllability of sound is a big deal for me. So just like I can build it in the original SYs, I couldn't control it to the degree that I wanted to. Not even as well as a DX7 Mark II, because you had 2 sliders and real time on it was great. So as much as the Montage is missing things I want, again, its real time control is phenomenal. So, I'm dying to get the Osmos because you have all those axes of data input, That's why I love the Hydra, just poly AT and the ribbon. I mean, that's just like gold, because you got to have input to it, because a triggered sound is fine, okay, but it has a context. You got to do something with that sound after you trigger it from a musical or emotive context, right? So that's why the modern synthesizers, and again, MPE, Rollies, these are like kind of cool because they're actually bringing it on, finally, in a way that's going to, I think, really be cool, because at the end of the day, you got to be expressive in what you do.
Yeah. There's another question in the chat room that I think would be a good one to get answered. It's from Wilderness Music. I'm a long-time subtractive guy. Bought the Reface DX for learning FM. Cannot get past the 2 envelopes. One seems identical to ADSR, but the other, ? How do they work together?
So that is a good question. So the first thing is, what is the algorithm that is being used? Because whether the envelope shapes the volume, okay, the ADSR, which I'm assuming is the question, that will happen for your carriers, meaning that's going to control the volume of the sound. Your modulators, the ones that are up behind it, those are the ones that are going to control the timbre over time, okay? So if you're going to start learning FM, you always want to start in a 2-operator pair where you have the carrier on the bottom, 1 modulator on the top, mute your other guys, and you want to play with the level of your modulator and the envelope of your modulator and the ratio of your modulator. Okay, that's where you want to start playing. And if you go to YamahaSynth.com, type in Manny Fernandez Reface, we have a series of tutorials up there on walking you through some of the basics of that. And that's how you should start, because the correlative things are the envelope for the carrier is your volume control over time, and the envelope on your modulator is your timbre control over time. Okay, so it controls what's called the modulation index, which means as it goes higher, the sound gets brighter with more harmonics, and less harmonics at lower amounts. It's not a filter, because the behavior of those harmonics, as Chowning says, a gift from nature. There's a natural mathematical thing that goes on that is inherently very naturalistic and acoustic sounding. Yeah, that's how you'd start.
There you go. And if you want to check that out, it is on the Yamaha Synth website, and this is just one of many of Manny's instructional guides on there. As you can see, it goes into a lot of detail. Very, very well worth looking into that.
So for the beginner, one thing that we took an intended direction of this is people always want to know how to make certain kinds of sounds, right? So we actually did approach it from some of the characteristics, like of bass sounds versus brass sounds versus lead sounds versus pad sounds, and delves into the basics of that. So and that links to a lot of, if you have the Reface, all the patches are on SoundMondo. So you can actually download them, and of course there's a lot of SoundCloud snippets on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see if there was anything else.
Sasquatch's ass one.
Oh yeah. Oh, here we go. Yeah, this one here.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my favourite subjects. Has Manny ever used or played with any of the Kurzweil Vast synths? And that kind of also ties in. Maybe you can answer both of these at the same time. What does Manny think of the Technics WSA1 physical modelling implementation?
Sure. So I was thankfully honored to be invited on the dev team for the K2000.
Okay.
And got to work with Chris Martirano, Joyardi, and the guys over there on Vast, and helped with some of the presets, and we did some of the first aftermarket banks for them. So I'm very, very familiar with Vast, and I love it. I love it a lot. Above my VL1 is my fully loaded K2000, which is, I think, in the first 10 of the production run.
Nice.
They did a really good job for it, and that engine is fresh today as it ever was. The funds in it are phenomenal in terms of the way you can process data from modulation sources on it. You know, I joke with Martirano. It's like it took this long, but you know, early versions of it actually had FM, and they politely asked Yamaha if they could include it. Yamaha politely said no. You know, yeah, it's a fantastic engine, and I dig it. And you know, after my SYs, it's my next favorite of my classic synths. But it's very, very capable, and you know, their new stuff, you know, with the PC4 and the 2700. And I got to tell you, the feature, the sound, and the capabilities. I mean, I know Kurzweil's kind of a niche, you love it or hate it type of product for guys that are like, you know, gigging in the sound, but bang for the buck for either of those instruments is pretty freaking huge.
Yeah.
So
what about the WSA1? Because that was kind of a weird implementation, wasn't it?
It's a weird one. So I have to claim a certain level of ignorance with it, because my exposure to it, for those of you that have been to a lot of NAMM and or trade shows, you got to kind of visualize this. My only exposure to it was about 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours in a room, a side room from the main NAMM floor, with one guy from Techniques, it set up on a table, a small monitoring system, and I don't think 2 people came in the room for the 3 hours I was there.
Wow.
It was such a left field thing for them. And, you know, we had finished all the VL stuff, and he was very helpful, very engaged, and he helped run me through the instrument, and I just really played with it and tried to, get into it to see what it could do. In the limited time I had with it, okay, what was frustrating to me was it was not as directive as I would like. Okay, the way the resonance structures work on the sample base, you have to explore a lot of things to say, oh, that's cool. You know, you can't build things because it was so dependent on that. So for me, it's just like, oh, wow, I have so much more control of building stuff in the VL architecture. Now, of course, it was polyphonic, which is a big deal. But I did not get one when they became commercially available. I know a couple people that have them that really do like them quite a lot. And again, if you dig into the nooks and crannies, do some unique things. But I had just very limited experience with it, especially coming from my last polyphonic modeling was a VP, and you know, it's a completely different beast in that standpoint.
It's one of those. I think I've said it before. It was one of those big regrets that I remember when they were like being reduced to clear because they just it wasn't a successful thing. I think the kind of the big music store in London was knocking the keyboard version out, I think at $649, and the rack was £400, which was nothing compared to the original price. And I sat there and thought, this looks great, physical modelling and all this kind of stuff. And then I looked at the brand name, and it was the brand name that put me off, because and I don't know whether it's the same in other parts of the world, but certainly here in UK, Technics is a hi-fi brand who also make home organs, and these are the sorts of home organs that you'd find in your granddad's home or your grandmother's home that she would sit and play her hymns on, and that would be it. And it was pure snobbery on my part that I thought, I'm not going to go for it. And then I heard it some years later and thought, why didn't I go for it? Because it is a very unique thing. It might not have been the best in the world, but it was quite unique, wasn't it? So, yeah.
But it
Anyway,
just goes to show you, it's just like anything, it's like every one of these keyboards have something that's unique or cool about them.
Yeah.
Sometimes it may be rightfully obvious from the get-go. Sometimes it may not be. Sometimes it just takes time to get into, So, I mean, a corollary of that, I have the K5000 is another one of those kind of, oddball machines, which it can do quite a lot, both because of the additive aspect of it, and it's got a pretty cool format filter in it. And so, that's another sort of unsung hero, but the guys that have them and have kept them are just like pry it from my cold dead hands.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
So I've got one last question before we wrap things up, because we have gone massively over time, but I don't think anybody noticed it at all, and I don't think anybody's regretting it one iota. And this is kind of a selfish question on my part. So we've both got Essence FMs, and we both love them, and I've learnt a lot from you about using it. That's helped me in my journey, which I'm still only at the beginning of. But you've sent myself and Simon, a bunch of your sounds, and they've been really great to kind of reverse engineer and see how you're doing what you're doing. You've got the Hydrasynth there. You've also got the Iridium. You've got Montage, and a bunch of other kind of current pieces of equipment. Are you looking to do any kind of commercial release of your patches, or are you purely now going to be just doing this for your own pleasure, or maybe providing manufacturers with some stuff for their factory libraries?
That's a good question. This kind of came up when we did the live stream of it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one of the questions that was kind of like in the forums, like, what do you do to make sure you get things finished? I am the worst in the world with that.
You're the Peter Gabriel of sound design.
It's just, don't get me wrong. When I'm given a project and a deadline, okay, I'll ship it to you early, and complete.
Yeah.
But in terms of this other stuff, and so the only thing that's keeping me from saying a yes is that then I actually have to finish it with a level of polish and expectation kind of deal. If look, if ASM, wants to take some of my stuff off my hands, that'd be great. Kadamo, they're a small company. I'm probably just going to share stuff along that line, because the best thing about just sharing it or giving it, and I've done this already in the Hydrasynth group. I've already done the SY99 group. I've already done the Kadamo group. I don't have to worry about support of it. It's like the one thing I don't miss about the Sound Source days was we had to everything had to be polished, had to be support, and all that kind of thing. So I would never want to get back into that. That mindset again. But if you're asking for you personally, I'll always hook you up. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's great. What I want to do before we go is, you mentioned earlier the Synergia. I'm not entirely sure how that's pronounced, but I thought that I would share that because this sounds like a really interesting project. So it's on GitHub, and there it is. So if you want to learn more about that, just look for Synergia. So Synergia. It's on GitHub. It looks like a nice, clean interface there, and it looks like, hopefully, like you say, they're getting close to coming out with something.
Yeah. And the coolest thing about it, the guy who's coding a lot of this, I've had some conversations. He's brought me into knowing some of the other synth engines he's developing, and I'm quite excited for interacting with him in the future as well.
That looks great.
Bookmark
that one and keep an eye on that. That looks some really cool stuff. And as Synth Addict points out in there, UVI do some nice synergy stuff, but of course it is all samples. But it's nice to have anyway, of course. But yeah, that's an interesting one. And of course, if people want to learn more about you, again, shameless plug time, I'm in control here, so you can't stop me. But of course, you can go to the Sound on Sound podcast website, and there it is, from DX to MODX. It's about an hour long, I think. And
I do ramble on.
No, well, the thing is, I have strict guidelines, and I'm told that my podcast should be no more than 30 to 40 minutes. And my editor is really strict. But when I sent him this, he's like, yeah, no, go for it. This is great. And so we got away with doing over an hour on that. and that's all there.
I've got to say too, like when that came out on the podcast, I listened to it. Then it came up on the YouTube, and I listened to it again.
Oh yes.
I listened to it one more time because it's such a great conversation between the two of you guys.
Thank you. And yes, it was. We did. I say we. It's Athene, my podcast manager, who puts these illustrated things together, and she gets picture montages. So if you like to see pictures when you're listening to your podcasts, that's there. So that's on the Sound on Sound website, and it's completely free. Just it's available on all major podcast channels and some minor ones too, I am told. Manny, it's been an absolute pleasure.
It's been that long. Holy moly.
I know, yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? September 2020. Just, I think that we were kind of, when that was published, we were kind of coming out of, we were having a nice kind of, it was before the second wave, the third wave, I don't know.
Yeah, no, actually, yeah, right on
days.
that. It's kind of funny that now that things are going back to normal, it's like for somebody like me who never has enough time to finish anything, it's like now it's like back with regular work and regular stuff and responsibilities. It's like, I can use another lockdown to get some things done.
Yeah, we begin to regret, I wish I'd done this. Manny, it's been an absolute pleasure as always, and please, do come back and talk to us again at some point. We'd love to learn more. And
if I can hype two things,
sure, go for it.
From the 2019 NAMM show, I did a presentation with Blake.
You did,
on the,
yes.
on the MODX, and then of course they had Don Lewis with John Chowning the next day. Google up those things because it's cool from a couple things. One is you can also hear some really unique sound design stuff that's on Montage, that's also part of the sound set from the tutorial series that's on Yamaha Synth. And for me, which was priceless, I was so, like I said, I just thought I missed it, is watching Chowning's reaction to my morphable piano.
Yes.
And watching Don play it and just hearing how it sounds. Because one of the things, getting to what Cryss is saying, is like, I'm not an accomplished player in any way, shape, or form. And so one of the things that has always been surprising to me, in a way, for lack of a better word, is my knack in the way that I program my sounds, that it seems they're eminently playable for everybody. Okay, and I don't know where so you talk about the musicality part of it as opposed to the technical part of it, Yeah. So there's stuff intrinsically in my musical brain that has nothing to do with the technique that says, regardless of the numbers, is that feeling right? Is that dynamic right? Okay. Is whatever that right? Because I'm always surprised that things sound as good as they do. To do an example is like some of the demos on my SoundCloud and YouTube of some of the things that I've done are free general MIDI files I pulled off the internet. And they're like untweaked, other than maybe a global velocity shift of 20, and then you play them, it's like, that sounds freaking good. It's like, anybody who programs synthesizers knows that aspect of them is the tricky part, because those little envelope tweaks that you set up or didn't set up, it's like when you first played samplers. It's like you play a sampler with a general MIDI sequence, it's like, it sounds like crap. You got to dial in all the envelopes, dynamics, all that kind of stuff to say, okay, now that sounds something real. And for whatever reason, my musical brain just sort of naturally collects that out, that they're eminently playable. So I'm kind of proud of that aspect of it.
So you should be. And here is, if people are looking for it, let's get get the right screen up here, Puricelli. Come on. What are you playing at? Let's find the right one, and it's this one. Sorry about this, but this is a really cool video to watch, and the one with Don as well, because Don, I've been very fortunate.
He's such a cool individual.
What a guy! We're hopefully going to get him on the show at some point soon. But an absolute legend. Oh, yeah, and of course, he was involved with programming sounds for the DX7 Mark I, which was amazing. We had a whole chat about that.
I'll just say, go ahead, and I'll get the plug in for me, and then I'll finish.
So this is on YamahaSynth.com, which I still think is a really great website. Loads of resource. You with Blake with the montage, and then the video is there as well. It's a really cool video. So yeah, you were going to say?
Yeah, so again for you, because I know I've sent you some Essence GX1 stuff. Last week I got to have a good chat with Gary Leuenberger.
Oh yeah.
Because he was involved at that, trying to find out some of the details of the algorithm setup. So I'll be sending you some new stuff now that he's filled out some of the gaps. And of course, Gary and Don, were like this in those days.
Yeah.
Up there, and Gary's a fascinating guy because him and Bristow. I've got some great stories from the days because Bristow was still around when I started, so I was lucky to work with Dave on SY99. I met SR on the 77 and stuff, and then I got to work with Gary on FS1R.
Nice.
So that was cool stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, we want to get Don on the show because I spoke to him and his wife just a few weeks ago. So hopefully we'll put those wheels in motion and get him on as well. And I did something for, I forget which university it was, down in the south of England. I did a lecture for them, and they had got Dave Bristow lined up to do like 1, 2 or 3 weeks later, and unfortunately they had to cancel because of technical issues. But they gave me his email address, and so I'm hopefully going to try and dig him out and see if we can get him on the show because that would be great to listen to. But anyway, let's just say once again thank you, Manny, for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. The feedback in the chat room has been amazing. Great person to have on the show, and please do come back at some point when you can get some more time off. That's fantastic. Thank you for taking the time to
my pleasure
to come with us.
My pleasure.
Let's just tell everyone what we've got coming up because that's always interesting and useful. I don't know if we can. We've got some more people like on our list, but we need to tie them into dates, and so I don't want to kind of jump the gun really. However, next week is going to be an interesting one because I'm not going to be here. And we've got a guest host, co-host type person. Dominic Hawkin is going to come in and kind of run the show for us because he's got experience with the system and he's great to have on. So thank you, Dominic, for your offer. He's going to be standing in for me.
I suppose your wife will make him a brew and that while he's round. Won't
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. She does make me one. So anyway. So we've got Dominic Hawkin doing the show next week, so he's kind of like a guest stroke host, which will be fun. And I'm going to try and dial in because the reason I'm not going to be there is that I'm a record collecting person, and it's Record Store Day, and there's a couple of Record Store Days this year, and the first one is this coming Friday, so week on Saturday. And I do the whole thing where I go outside and queue outside the shop from the early hours, and so that's why I'm going to be there. So I'll certainly be watching on my iPhone, but I might even try and dial in and kind of be an outside roving reporter guest with a bunch of other weirdos that sit outside record shops. So yeah, Dominic Hawkin next week. And then after that, who have we got? Yes, we've got Roger Lyons coming onto the show, which is going to be really exciting. That's June 18th. After that, we have promised that we are going to change this picture, but Kent Spong, he was a bit under the weather, let's say, when that picture was taken. But Kent will be with us on June 25th, and that's going to be a great show.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, one of the most prominent and finest synth repair technicians, certainly this side of the Atlantic, if not further afield. And then after that, we are going to be joined by, and this I'm super excited about this one, JJ Exarlic, ex of Art of Noise, and of course musician, producer, Fairlight expert extraordinaire. He'll be joining us on July the 2nd. July 16th, that's the other date that Dom hopefully will be hosting for us. I think we agreed both dates, but yeah, anyway, he's doing it, I've told him. But also at the end of July, we've managed to secure, finally, Mark Doty. So Mark Doty will be on the show July 30th, so you can all harangue him in the chat room about his definition of paraphonic stuff. That's going to be an interesting... I love Mark to bits, so it's going to be a great show. And we've got a whole bunch of other names that are literally under my fingertips here, but I am not going to show them to you. But let's just say we've got some great names coming up on the show in the coming weeks and months. Thank you to everybody in the chat room. Thank you to my co-hosts, And of course to Manny as well. Thanks for all of your input. Thanks for your questions. Thank you for your support. Thank you to all our subscribers, because we've now hit 600. Woohoo! Yeah. So that's really cool. And please do make sure that if you haven't already, do subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and spread the word. Tell everybody about us. Tell us that we have great shows with great guests, with bells dinging in the background, if we can hear that. We'll be back, same time, same place next week, but with a different host with a little bit less hair than me. And we shall see you in about a week's time. I don't think there's anything else for me to say, guys, but thank you once again, and we'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye. It's not playing. No. We've had a failure.
A failure. Chapter 2?
Yeah, here we go. Let's try this again.
I should go grab a Modelo and I'm good.
Never could see any other way. Never could see any other way.
Yeah. Right, let's try this one more time. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Goodbye.